They were carved from stone long before our timelines begin, monuments that refuse to behave like relics. Across deserts, jungles, and frozen plateaus, structures emerge that seem to defy the limits of ancient tools, geometry, and even human endurance. How were multi-ton blocks shaped with impossible precision? Why do some sites align with stars no one should have mapped? And what knowledge vanished with their builders? Tonight, we step beyond accepted history and into the shadowed spaces between facts, where discovery becomes mystery, and every answer only deepens the question. On a low ridge above the village of Ġegbug in western Malta, the land rises gently from terraced fields into a quiet scatter of limestone blocks. At first glance, the place feels unremarkable. No towering columns, no grand facades. Yet this modest plateau, known as Skorba, holds some of the earliest architectural fingerprints of civilization in the central Mediterranean. The air here is dry and still. The pale stone absorbs the sun, giving off a faint mineral warmth. Around the ruins, olive trees bend in the wind, and the sea glimmers just beyond the horizon. But beneath this calm surface lies a site that forced archaeologists to rethink the very beginnings of Maltese prehistory. Skorba was first systematically excavated in the early 1960s by the Maltese archaeologist David H. Trump. What he uncovered did not look dramatic. Shallow foundations, fragmentary walls, layers of compacted soil. But its importance was immense. Carbon dating revealed that parts of the site stretch back to around 5,400 BCE, placing Skorba among the earliest known settlements on the islands. These earliest levels, now called the Gardalam phase, show a simple community of Neolithic farmers, rough stone huts, handmade pottery, tools shaped from flint and bone. The pottery is dark, undecorated, almost austere. It suggests a people concerned with survival rather than symbolism, newly arrived in a land with thin soils and unpredictable rainfall. Yet above these humble beginnings, the story shifts. Later layers, belonging to the gray Skorba and red Skorba phases, reveal a society undergoing a subtle transformation. The pottery becomes smoother, more carefully fired. Decorative red slips appear. Architecture begins to follow curved forms rather than crude enclosures. These are no longer just shelters. They feel intentional, designed. And then, only a few centuries later across Malta, something extraordinary happens. The people who lived at Skorba, or their descendants, would go on to construct the megalithic temples for which the islands are famous: Hagar Chim, Manajdra, Tarxian, Ġgantija. These structures are older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Egypt. They are built from blocks weighing several tons, aligned with solstices, shaped with surprising precision. But Skorba does not show how this leap occurred. There is no clear technological bridge between the simple huts of its earliest layers and the monumental architecture that followed. No quarries filled with half-shaped blocks. No gradual increase in construction scale. The archaeological record feels, in places, like a missing chapter. Mainstream archaeology offers cautious explanations. Perhaps techniques were developed at sites that have since eroded into the sea. Malta's ancient shoreline lay far lower than today's, and much of its prehistoric landscape is now submerged. Entire communities may have vanished beneath rising waters at the end of the last ice age, taking their workshops and transitional experiments with them. But some researchers note stranger details. At Skorba and other early sites, the foundations are curved in ways that later temples would echo almost exactly. The geometry appears consistent over millennia, as though a conceptual blueprint had been preserved long before monumental stonework became possible. Was this knowledge passed orally, or encoded in rituals, patterns, and memory systems we no longer recognize? There are also questions of population. The islands could never have supported large labor forces, Yet the later temples demanded coordinated effort, planning, and resource management. From where did the organizational knowledge arise? And why did this sophisticated culture vanish around 2500 BCE, leaving no clear descendants, no written language, no trace of collapse? Standing at Skorba today, the ruins offer no answers. Only fragments remain, a curve of stone here, a scatter of pottery there. But they represent a threshold, a quiet, almost invisible gateway between the ordinary lives of early farmers and one of the ancient world's most baffling architectural traditions. Perhaps Skorba is not the beginning of Malta's temple builders, but the last surviving echo of something older still, a culture whose full story now lies buried beneath soil, sea, and time, waiting to be rediscovered. From the quiet curves of Skorba's low foundations, where Malta's earliest builders left only faint traces of their intentions, our journey now shifts eastward, across seas, deserts, and thousands of years, to a landscape where stone does not whisper, but stands upright, silent, and watching. In the northern reaches of Saudi Arabia, near the modern town of Sakaka, the desert opens into a broad, stony plain. Here, rising from the gravel like a frozen procession, stand the pillars of Al-Rajajil. The men. More than 50 upright stones are scattered across the site, many arranged in loose rows, each slab tilted slightly as if caught mid-stride. They are not towering monoliths, yet their human-like silhouettes give the unsettling impression of a crowd paused in motion. The stones are weathered, their edges softened by millennia of wind and sand. Some stand over 3 meters high. Others have fallen, broken at their bases, leaving scars in the earth where they once stood. There is no enclosing wall, no obvious ceremonial platform, no carved inscriptions to explain their presence. Only the desert and these figures of stone. Archaeologists date Al-Rajajil to around the late 4th millennium BCE, roughly contemporaneous with early Bronze Age cultures across the Near East. Excavations around the bases of several pillars have uncovered burial chambers beneath them, small stone-lined tombs containing human remains and grave goods. This has led to the prevailing interpretation. Al-Rajajil was likely a necropolis, a place where the dead were honored and marked by standing stones that served as memorials. Yet the simplicity of that explanation falters under closer scrutiny. The stones are not placed randomly. Many appear aligned in roughly north-south orientations, and in some clusters, the rows run almost parallel, suggesting deliberate planning rather than ad hoc burial markers. Some pillars were clearly shaped before being erected, their faces flattened, their tops smoothed. This was not a hurried or purely functional effort. Why go to such lengths to mark graves in an environment where stone was abundant, but labor was precious? Local tradition offers a darker, more poetic story. The name Al-Rajajil itself carries folklore. Legends speak of a tribe turned to stone as divine punishment, frozen forever in the desert for defying a higher power. While no historian treats this as literal truth, such stories persist across generations, clinging to the site with the same stubbornness as the wind-worn pillars themselves. From a mainstream archaeological perspective, the site reflects a society in transition, nomadic or semi-nomadic groups beginning to define territory, lineage, and memory through durable monuments. The dead, once left to the shifting sands, were now anchored to place, their identities etched into the landscape through standing stone. But there are features at Al-Rajajil that do not neatly fit this model. Several pillars stand above tombs that contain no human remains, as if the monument itself mattered more than the burial beneath it. In other cases, multiple stones cluster around a single grave, creating a visual emphasis that exceeds any practical need for identification. Were these markers of status, symbols of clan identity, or elements in rituals we no longer recognize? Then there is the matter of the horizon. Researchers have noted that some rows of stones align with sunrise and sunset points at certain times of the year, though the data is incomplete and interpretations vary. If these alignments were intentional, Al-Rajajil may have functioned not only as a cemetery, but as a calendar, a way for desert communities to track seasons critical for migration, herding, or trade. This raises a larger question echoed across prehistoric sites worldwide. Why did so many early cultures invest their limited resources into stone alignments tied to the sky? There is no direct evidence that the builders of Al-Rajajil practiced astronomy in any formal sense. No star charts, no carved symbols, no myths recorded in stone. And yet, the pattern appears, not just here, but at Karnak in France, in Nabta Playa in Egypt, in Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Different cultures, different environments, the same impulse to lift stone upright and orient it to the heavens. Some fringe researchers suggest a lost network of knowledge, a diffuse tradition shared across early human societies that linked death, memory, and celestial cycles into a single worldview. In this interpretation, sites like Al-Rajajil were not isolated experiments, but fragments of a much older heritage now scattered and incomplete. There is no proof of this, but the absence of proof does not erase the unease that lingers at the site. Standing among the stones today, one is struck not by what is present, but by what is missing. There are no dwellings nearby, no clear evidence of long-term settlement. The people who built Al-Rajajil did not live here. They came, performed their rituals, raised their pillars, buried their dead, and left. The desert closed over their tracks, preserving only the silent men they left behind. Perhaps Al-Rajajil is simply what it appears to be, a Bronze Age cemetery shaped by practical needs and evolving traditions. Or perhaps it is something more elusive, a place where early communities attempted to negotiate with time itself, fixing memory into stone so it could outlast the fragile lives that raised it. As the sun dips low over the Sakaka plain, the pillars stretch long shadows across the gravel, blurring the line between monument and figure. And in that fading light, the question remains. Were these stones meant only to mark the dead, or to speak to something beyond the desert, beyond history that we have yet to understand? As the last light fades over the stone figures of Al-Rajajil, the desert seems to close in around them, as if absorbing their unanswered questions back into the sand. From those silent sentinels, our journey now turns east, beyond Arabia, beyond the familiar corridors of early civilization, to a cluster of ruins that lie scattered across the plains of South Asia, where stone does not stand tall like men, but rests in wide, deliberate layers beneath the sky. In northern Pakistan, near the ancient city of Taxila, a low hill rises gently above fields of wheat and mustard. At its summit are the remains of Dharamrajika, a site best known today for its Buddhist stupa complex built during the Mauryan Empire in the 3rd century BCE. But beneath the brick stupas, beneath the polished relic chambers and votive shrines, lie foundations that do not belong to the Buddhist world at all. They are prehistoric stone platforms, massive, flat constructions formed from carefully fitted limestone slabs, stacked in tiers that follow no obvious religious canon and no clear architectural lineage. At ground level, these platforms appear deceptively simple, broad rectangles of stone, some measuring over 20 meters across, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of weather. Yet when excavated, archaeologists found that these were not casual pavements. The stones were laid in deliberate courses, bonded with compacted clay, forming raised terraces long predating the Buddhist monuments that now crown them. Radiocarbon dating of material trapped between the slabs, suggests that some of these platforms may date back to the late Neolithic or early Chalcolithic periods, potentially over 2,000 years older than the stupas themselves. The mainstream explanation is cautious and restrained. The platforms, it is argued, may have been the foundations of early ceremonial spaces, places where pre-Buddhist communities gathered for rituals tied to fertility, seasonal cycles, or ancestral memory. When Buddhism later arrived in the region, its builders may simply have repurposed these ancient bases, layering their own sacred structures atop sites that were already imbued with meaning. It is a reasonable theory, but as with Skorba and Al-Rajajil, the simplicity of the explanation fades under close inspection. These platforms were not small village altars. Their size, labor investment, and precision imply organized communities with the capacity to mobilize large workforces long before the rise of urban centers in the Indus Valley. And yet, around Dharamrajika, there is no corresponding evidence of settlements large enough to justify such monumental construction. No dense clusters of dwellings, no extensive tool workshops, only the platforms, solid, silent, and strangely self-contained. Even more puzzling is their geometry. The terraces follow subtle alignments that do not match the later Buddhist stupas above them. Some appear oriented toward the cardinal directions, while others deviate slightly, forming a pattern that has yet to be convincingly explained. Were these alignments purely functional, dictated by the slope of the hill, or were they symbolic, perhaps reflecting beliefs about space, cosmology, or the relationship between earth and sky? Local folklore, preserved in fragments of oral tradition, offers a different perspective. Long before the name Dharamrajika was known, the hill was said to be a place where the Old Ones gathered, figures not remembered as kings or priests, but as lawgivers, watchers, mediators between worlds. In some stories, the platforms were not built, but found, uncovered after floods or earthquakes revealed stone surfaces too old to belong to any remembered people. No historian accepts these stories as literal truth. Yet they raise an unsettling question. Why do these myths persist around sites that archaeology struggles to fully contextualize? As excavations expanded, researchers discovered that similar stone platforms exist at other locations across South Asia. In the Swat Valley, in parts of northern India, even in the highlands of Nepal. Each is different in detail, yet they share a common theme: raised, carefully leveled stone terraces built in eras that leave behind few other monumental traces. Some scholars interpret them as proto-urban experiments, early attempts at organizing communal space before the rise of cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. In this view, the platforms represent an architectural rehearsal, a stage in the slow evolution from scattered farming communities to complex civilizations. Others suggest they were ritual landscapes, not settlements at all, stages for ceremonies now lost to time. The absence of domestic debris, hearths, or refuse pits supports this idea. These were not places of living, but of gathering, of watching, of waiting. Waiting for what exactly remains unclear. A few researchers have noted that the Dharamrajika platforms, when mapped in relation to the surrounding hills, form sightlines toward distant mountain passes and river confluences. These are not arbitrary landmarks. They are the arteries of ancient movement, trade routes, migration corridors, seasonal pathways. It is tempting to imagine the platforms as observation points, perhaps used to monitor approaching groups, herds, or celestial events tied to agricultural cycles. Yet no instruments have been found. No markers, no carved scales, no inscriptions to anchor such theories. More speculative interpretations drift further from the material record. Some propose that these terraces were designed as resonance chambers, using layered stone to amplify sound or vibration during ritual performance. Others see them as mnemonic devices, landscapes constructed to encode cultural memory through spatial arrangement rather than written language. There is, again, no proof, only patterns that repeat just often enough to be noticed, but never often enough to be resolved. What is certain is that the Buddhist builders who later crowned Dharamrajika with stupas recognized something powerful in these ancient foundations. They did not dismantle them. They did not bury them completely. Instead, they built upon them, as though acknowledging a sanctity older than their own faith. Today, the platforms lie half-hidden beneath collapsed brickwork and drifting soil. Tourists pass by them without comment, drawn instead to the ornate remnants of monasteries above. But if one kneels beside the stone slabs and traces the seams with a fingertip, the impression is unmistakable. These surfaces were meant to endure. They were not built for a generation or even a century. They were built for a future that their makers would never see, perhaps never fully understand. And as with so many sites scattered across the ancient world, the platforms of Dharamrajika leave us suspended between what we know and what we can only sense. Were they the foundations of forgotten ceremonies, the scaffolding of early civilizations, or the last visible trace of a worldview now erased? The hill keeps its silence, offering no answers. Only the uneasy feeling that beneath these stones, another story is still waiting to be uncovered. From the layered stone platforms of Dharamrajika, foundations built for a future their makers would never see, our journey now drifts westward again, across continents and centuries, to a lonely limestone plateau in the heart of England's Peak District, where the land opens into a high, windswept bowl of grass and sky. Here lies Arbor Low. At first glance, it does not announce itself with grandeur. There are no soaring monoliths piercing the clouds, no obvious axis of approach. Instead, a ring of massive limestone slabs rests quietly on the ground, each stone toppled long ago, lying where it fell. Together, they form an oval nearly 100 meters across, encircled by a deep ditch and an outer bank. From above, the shape is unmistakable. A prehistoric amphitheater carved into the earth. The stones are heavy, some weighing more than 10 tons, their surfaces rough and pale, pitted by rain and frost. Sheep graze among them. The wind carries the smell of damp grass and peat. And yet, even in this pastoral stillness, Arbor Low does not feel abandoned. It feels paused. Archaeologists date the monument to around 3000 BCE, making it roughly contemporary with Stonehenge in its earliest phases. It belongs to the great tradition of Neolithic henges, circular enclosures built not for defense, but for gathering, ritual, and perhaps something far less tangible. Mainstream interpretation suggests that Arbor Low was a ceremonial center, a place where scattered farming communities met to mark seasonal changes, reaffirm social bonds, and bury their dead. Excavations within the circle have uncovered human remains, cremations and inhumations, placed carefully in pits between the stones. The monument, in this view, was a sacred enclosure, part temple, part cemetery, part stage for rites now lost to memory. But Arbor Low resists tidy classification. Unlike Stonehenge, whose stones were deliberately erected upright, every slab here lies flat. Some appear to have been intentionally laid down, others may have fallen over time. The question remains unresolved. Was Arbor Low meant to stand tall, or was its power always meant to flow horizontally, across the earth rather than toward the sky? The ditch surrounding the stone circle deepens the mystery. It was carved into solid limestone using tools of antler and stone, a monumental labor investment for a society without metal or written language. The ditch lies inside the bank, not outside, a configuration that offers no defensive advantage. Its purpose was symbolic, not practical, a boundary between worlds. What world lay inside, and what world remained without? The orientation of Arbor Low has also drawn attention. The two entrances to the henge, narrow causeways through the bank, align roughly with the southwest and northeast. Some researchers have proposed that these openings correspond to solar events, perhaps marking the rising or setting of the sun at key points in the year. Others see lunar alignments, noting that the Peak District offers clear sight lines toward the distant hills where the moon's extremes might have been observed. Yet the data is inconclusive. No single celestial pattern explains the monument fully. The alignments seem suggestive, but not precise enough to settle the matter. Standing within the circle today, one becomes acutely aware of sound. The surrounding bank muffles the wind, creating a subtle hush. Voices echo strangely. Footsteps feel amplified. It is easy to imagine this place filled with chanting, drumming, or silence so dense it pressed on the ears. There are no records of what took place here, only the afterimage of activity preserved in stone and earth. Local folklore drapes Arbor Low in its own veil of meaning. It was once called the King's Henge, believed to be the burial place of an ancient ruler whose name was forgotten long before the Roman legions ever reached Britain. In medieval times, the fallen stones were said to be petrified giants, struck down for defying divine law, an echo of the legends surrounding Al-Rajajil half a world away. Why do such stories recur in cultures that never met? From a scientific standpoint, the similarities are coincidence, parallel attempts by early societies to make sense of awe-inspiring ruins. But there is another way to see it, that humans, separated by distance and language, are united by the same impulse to explain what feels older than explanation. More speculative theories swirl quietly around Arbor Low, rarely spoken of in academic halls. Some propose that the henge was a kind of acoustic instrument, its shape designed to enhance resonance during ritual performance. Others suggest that the flattened stones were deliberately arranged to form a map of the landscape, a stone memory of territories, lineages, or myths now erased. And then there is the question of abandonment. Arbor Low did not evolve into a medieval church or a Roman fort. It was not continuously reused like Dharamrajika. At some point, its builders, or their descendants, simply stopped coming. The ceremonies ended. The circle fell silent. The grass crept inward. Why would a society invest so much effort into a place only to leave it behind? Climate change is one explanation. Shifting weather patterns around the end of the Neolithic may have disrupted agriculture in the uplands, forcing communities to relocate. Social transformation is another. New beliefs replacing old, new centers of power rendering the ancient henge obsolete. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the emotional residue that lingers here. Because Arbor Low does not feel like a ruin of utility. It feels like the remains of a conversation abruptly cut short, a sentence in stone that trails off before the meaning is complete. As the sun lowers behind the Peak District hills, the shadows of the fallen stones stretch across the grass, connecting one slab to another in fleeting lines of darkness. For a moment, the circle almost seems to rise again, not in height, but in presence. And the question persists, as it has for 5,000 years, was Arbor Low merely a gathering place for the living and the dead, or a threshold between something we remember and something we have yet to understand? From the quiet solemnity of Arbor Low, where fallen stones whisper of ceremonies long ended, our journey turns northward once more, into the windswept landscapes of northeastern Scotland. Here, amid the rolling hills and heather-clad moors of Aberdeenshire, another enigmatic tradition of stone construction emerges, one that bends the familiar rules of monument building into something both precise and enigmatic. These are the recumbent stone circles. At first glance, they appear deceptively simple, circles of carefully selected granite boulders low to the ground, with a single massive stone laid horizontally along the circle's perimeter. This recumbent stone, often flanked by two upright flanker stones, dominates the horizon from its resting place, drawing the eye with an almost magnetic force. Unlike other stone circles scattered across Britain, these are low, broad, and deliberately weighted along a single axis, an orientation that immediately invites questions about intention, meaning, and knowledge lost to time. The circles date to the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, roughly 2,500 to 1,500 BCE. Excavations at sites like Tomnaveri, Sunhoney, and Fintray have revealed layers of cremated human remains, charcoal, and fragments of pottery, suggesting a ceremonial function intimately linked to death and ancestral remembrance. Yet the architecture of the circles is unlike that of contemporaneous sites elsewhere. The recumbent stones are carefully chosen for size and shape, often granite sourced from miles away, their horizontal placement deliberate and precise. The flanker stones, usually the tallest in the circle, form a visual gateway that frames the recumbent like a stage for the sun or the moon. Mainstream archaeology proposes that the circles served as ritual spaces for funerary ceremonies or community gatherings, possibly linked to lunar or solar observations. The recumbent's placement along the southwest or southern horizon appears to correspond to key celestial events: the midwinter moon, lunar standstills, and perhaps even solstice alignments. From this perspective, the circles are early observatories, built to anchor communities to the rhythms of the heavens, blending cosmology with ritual in stone. Yet, the more closely we examine the details, the deeper the mystery becomes. The recumbent stones are not simply markers. Their horizontal axis and enormous mass suggest sophisticated knowledge of weight distribution and structural stability. How did communities without written records or advanced tools select, transport, and place these stones with such precision? Some are positioned atop slight inclines, their surfaces leveled with care, implying not only effort but planning and engineering acumen that rivals much later constructions. Furthermore, the visual impact of the circles cannot be ignored. From within, the recumbent dominates the southern horizon, but from outside, the circle appears subtly elevated, as though commanding the landscape itself. Was this purely symbolic, a statement of presence within the land, or was it functional, designed to create acoustic resonance or sight lines for distant watchers? Some researchers have noted peculiar patterns in how the flanker stones align with the recumbent and the surrounding horizon, hinting at an awareness of astronomical cycles that is impressive, yet not fully understood. Local folklore adds another layer to the enigma. These stones have long been called the stones of the sun, or moon's watchers, and tales persist of supernatural guardians, of rituals that continue unseen under moonlight, and of the land itself remembering those who built the circles. Legends speak of giants, spirits, or ancient druids shaping the stones to hold power, not merely as monuments, but as living conduits between earth and sky. While these stories are not historical evidence, they underscore the sense of wonder and reverence these sites inspired over millennia. Even more puzzling is the distribution of the circles. Unlike the henges of southern Britain, these recumbent stone circles are confined to Aberdeenshire, forming a network of sites that share construction techniques but vary subtly in size, stone selection, and orientation. Why did this tradition flourish so specifically here? Was it an isolated cultural innovation or a survival of knowledge from a wider, now lost network of Neolithic builders? Archaeological excavations have also revealed traces of fires, pits, and small artifacts near the recumbents, but nothing that conclusively explains the nature of the ceremonies performed. Did the circles mark the passage of time, honor ancestors, or serve as cosmological maps? Or were they multifunctional, serving both practical and symbolic purposes? Places where the living could measure the heavens, communicate with the dead, and cement social cohesion all at once? Some fringe interpretations have proposed that the circles encode more than ritual or astronomy. Could the horizontal recumbent stones function as ancient calendars, aligning with lunar extremes or solstice events in ways that encode complex knowledge? Others suggest the low, weighted design could have had acoustic properties, amplifying chant or ceremony in a way that is now lost to human memory. There is no direct evidence for these theories, yet the precision and consistency of the structures across Aberdeenshire cannot be dismissed lightly. Standing within one of these circles today, the experience is immediate and visceral. The recumbent stretches along the southern horizon, commanding the space without aggression. The flanker stones frame it like silent sentinels. The wind moves through the circle, bending sound in subtle ways, creating a sensation of space charged with something beyond the mundane. And though the land around is quiet, the arrangement of stone and sky suggests a dialogue that has survived thousands of years, patiently waiting for comprehension. Perhaps the recumbent stone circles were ceremonial, astronomical, acoustic, symbolic, or all of these at once. Perhaps they are echoes of a worldview entirely alien to us, designed to preserve knowledge, memory, or power in a way that survives only in stone. And yet, as with Arbor Low and Dharamrajika before them, the more we uncover, the more questions emerge. How did these communities conceptualize time, space, and ritual? Why did they concentrate such effort in one remote region? And what subtle truths, encoded in stone and sky, remain hidden, waiting for someone to decipher them? The stones themselves offer no answer, only presence, silent, precise, recumbent, watching the horizon, watching us. And in that stillness, the mystery endures, as it has for over 4 millennia. From the stoic recumbent circles of Aberdeenshire, where upright stones bend to the rhythm of the moon and the southern horizon, our journey now turns further north and west, to the windswept archipelago of Orkney, where the North Sea meets Scotland in a relentless chorus of wind, salt, and stone. Here lies Maeshowe, a chambered cairn whose unassuming mound conceals one of the most precise and enigmatic constructions of the Neolithic world. At first, Maeshowe appears almost modest, a low, grassy mound rising gently from the surrounding flatlands near Stennis. Yet beneath its green exterior lies an intricate network of stone chambers and corbelled passages, a structure meticulously designed and constructed more than 5,000 years ago. The entrance is a narrow corridor of carefully fitted slabs, leading inward to a central chamber crowned by a high, corbelled roof that has remained remarkably intact over millennia. The passage itself is aligned with extraordinary precision. On the winter solstice, a shaft of sunlight travels along the corridor, illuminating the inner chamber in a phenomenon that has fascinated archaeologists and visitors alike. Maeshowe belongs to a wider tradition of chambered tombs built in Orkney during the Neolithic, yet it stands apart for its sophistication. Its builders, long before written records or advanced engineering tools, achieved a level of precision that rivals monuments elsewhere in Europe. Every stone is carefully shaped to interlock with its neighbors, the corbelling of the roof distributing weight with an almost architectural intuition, and the mound itself acting as both protection and symbol. Excavations in the 19th century revealed not only human remains, but also a collection of artifacts, stone tools, pottery fragments, and the faint traces of ritual offerings. Yet Maeshowe's true surprise came centuries later, when Viking runes were discovered etched into its walls. Raiders and travelers, long after the tomb had been sealed, left their mark in the dark recesses of the chamber, transforming the site from a silent monument of the Neolithic into a palimpsest of human interaction across millennia. mainstream interpretation frames Maeshowe as a communal tomb, a repository for the dead of an organized society, possibly of high status or spiritual significance. Its solstice alignment suggests an awareness of celestial cycles, perhaps for ritual marking of the year, synchronization of agricultural activities, or symbolic reconciliation between life and death. In this reading, Maeshowe is both a tomb and a calendar, a space where memory, cosmology, and architecture converge. Yet, as with other ancient structures we have explored, questions emerge that resist straightforward explanation. Why was Maeshowe built with such precise alignment when neighboring cairns, equally monumental, show far less concern for solar phenomena? Was the winter solstice the only marker of importance, or part of a more elaborate understanding of the heavens now lost to us? Could the builders have encoded astronomical knowledge within the very stones of the passage in ways that remain invisible to modern eyes? There is also the matter of construction. The central chamber's corbelled roof rises nearly 4 meters above the floor, an extraordinary height for Neolithic builders without metal tools. The stones are massive, quarried from distant sources, shaped, transported, and assembled with care. How did these communities, small and dispersed, organize labor, plan logistics, and achieve such geometric sophistication? And if Maeshowe was indeed a communal tomb, why was such effort invested in architectural finesse rather than solely in burial? Beyond its physical and astronomical features, Maeshowe exudes a sense of intentional mystery. The long, narrow passage leading to the chamber creates a deliberate experience of movement and anticipation. The light of the solstice illuminates only for a brief window, casting shadows that dance across the walls. The moment is fleeting, ephemeral, yet designed to impress, to awe, to communicate something beyond the practical needs of the living or the dead. What did it feel like for those who entered 5,000 years ago, torchlight flickering against stone, and to witness the sudden illumination of the chamber by the sun? Speculative interpretations have emerged over time. Some suggest that Maeshowe was more than a tomb or calendar, perhaps a ceremonial center for initiation rites, a place where the living could commune with ancestors, or a landscape of power designed to anchor the Neolithic community both spiritually and politically. Others propose that the precise orientation and construction represent a lost body of knowledge, a codified understanding of geometry, astronomy, and cosmology that has disappeared entirely from human memory. The Viking runes, carved centuries later, add a curious layer. These inscriptions testify to the tomb's continued significance, yet they also obscure its original purpose. Did the Vikings sense something of the monument's power, or were their markings merely opportunistic graffiti? The layers of interaction over time, Neolithic builders, later communities, Viking visitors, create a palimpsest of human engagement, a record of fascination, reverence, and perhaps even fear, imprinted on stone. Standing at Maeshowe today, the wind sweeping across the Orkney plains, the mound appears peaceful, almost innocuous. Yet step inside the corridor, feel the stones underhanded by thousands of years, sense the light falling across the chamber at the solstice, and the weight of human effort, intention, and mystery becomes tangible. This is a place where time bends, where the living and the dead, the observed and the observer, intersect. Maeshowe, like Arbor Low, Dharamrajika, and the recumbent stone circles of Aberdeenshire, challenges our assumptions. It asks not only what was built, but why. What drove communities with no written language, no metallurgy, and no surviving record of design theory to invest immense energy in structures of enduring precision? Were these spaces purely ritual, purely astronomical, or something more profound? Repositories of knowledge, memory, and meaning beyond our comprehension? And so, as the Orkney wind moves through the mound's corridors, the questions remain. Maeshowe endures, silent yet eloquent, inviting us to wonder what its builders knew, what they intended, and what truths are still hidden, locked within stone and shadow, waiting for those willing to look beyond the surface. From the wind-swept corridors of Maeshowe, where sunlight penetrates a Neolithic tomb only once a year, our journey now drifts southward across the European continent, to the rolling hills and river valleys of what is today France, Switzerland, and Germany. Here, upon elevated ridges and strategic promontories, rise the remnants of Gallic Hillforts, monumental earthworks that once defined the landscapes of Iron Age Europe, commanding attention and provoking questions that endure to this day. At first glance, a Gallic Hillfort seems simple: mounds of earth, stone revetments, and ditches forming roughly circular or oval enclosures atop hills. Yet the scale and sophistication of these sites reveal a far deeper story. Some, like the Oppidum of Bibracte in Burgundy or Heidengraben in Baden-Württemberg, extend over hundreds of hectares, enclosing multiple terraces, defensive walls, and internal structures whose precise functions remain mysterious. From a distance, the fortifications appear almost organic, following the contours of the hills, as though the builders allowed the land itself to guide their constructions. Excavations have uncovered domestic dwellings, storage pits, craft workshops, and fragments of pottery and metalwork, pointing to vibrant communities thriving within these fortified spaces. Yet the arrangement of the fortifications raises compelling questions. Many hill forts display multiple concentric ramparts, ditches, and gates arranged with such precision that some researchers have speculated these were more than defensive structures. Were they designed primarily to withstand sieges or to impress, to assert control over a landscape, or even to create a ritualized experience for those entering and moving through the site? The dating of hill forts varies, but many flourished from the late Bronze Age into the Iron Age, roughly 800 to 100 BCE, just before the Roman conquest. Their builders were skilled in earthwork engineering, constructing embankments sometimes 10 meters high, with stone facings and timber reinforcements. Yet, despite these accomplishments, many hill forts appear to have been abandoned after only a few generations, leaving their massive constructions without sustained occupation. Why invest such monumental labor only to leave the site behind? Mainstream scholarship emphasizes defensive, political, and social explanations. Hill forts may have served as centers of regional power, refuges during conflict, marketplaces, or administrative hubs. Their elevated positions afforded control over surrounding valleys and trade routes, making them strategically advantageous. But in many cases, the scale and labor intensity seem disproportionate to these practical needs. Some oppida contain intricate internal divisions, with terraces and enclosures whose function remains obscure, spaces too large or isolated to be residential, yet carefully designed and integrated into the fort's overall layout. Orientation and placement offer another layer of intrigue. Hill forts often align with natural features such as rivers, ridges, and sightlines to neighboring forts. Were these alignments purely pragmatic, chosen for surveillance and defense? Or did they hold symbolic significance, marking territorial boundaries, sacred landscapes, or astronomical alignments now lost to memory? Some researchers have noted that certain gates and ramparts correspond to solstitial sunrises or sunsets, suggesting a possible ceremonial or calendrical dimension to their construction. Local folklore adds yet another dimension. In regions of France and Switzerland, hill forts are often associated with legends of ancient kings, heroes, and spirits, long predating written histories. Stories speak of treasures buried within ramparts, of secret chambers hidden beneath mounds, and of mystical knowledge encoded into the landscape itself. While these tales cannot be verified, they reveal a persistent cultural memory of these sites as spaces of power, mystery, and significance. Beyond folklore, some speculative theories push further. Could the hill forts have served as centers of astronomical observation, similar in spirit to the recumbent stone circles of Aberdeenshire or the Neolithic terraces of Dharamrajika? Were the embankments and ditches themselves symbols, encoding social hierarchy, cosmological order, or ancestral knowledge in ways that we no longer understand? The repetition of circular and oval layouts across hundreds of sites, and the careful calibration of their terraces, suggests intentionality that goes beyond mere defense. The relationship of hill forts to the surrounding environment also raises questions. Many were constructed on sites with little natural water or arable land, requiring significant logistical effort to sustain life within their walls. Were these forts occupied year-round or seasonally, serving as ceremonial, administrative, or military centers that drew people from the surrounding countryside? If so, how did their builders coordinate labor, resources, and social organization on such a scale, long before the advent of formal states or written records? Walking along the remnants of a hill fort today, the impressions are immediate. Earthworks rise against the horizon, ditches cut deep into the soil, and the remains of terraces suggest purposeful design, yet leave the mind grasping for meaning. The wind sweeps through abandoned gateways, carrying the faint echo of human activity now gone, of construction, of gatherings, of ceremonies perhaps never recorded. One senses the presence of those who once inhabited these spaces, their intentions preserved in earth and stone, yet remaining elusive to modern understanding. Gallic Hillforts like Arbor Low, Maeshowe, and the recumbent circles of Aberdeenshire challenge assumptions about the capabilities, priorities, and worldview of ancient communities. They are monumental, deliberate, and yet enigmatic, built with skill and purpose, yet often abandoned or repurposed, leaving gaps in the archaeological record. Were they primarily defensive, social, ceremonial, or some combination beyond our full comprehension, reflecting an understanding of landscape, community, and cosmos lost to time? As the sun sets behind the ridges, casting long shadows across the embankments and ditches, one can almost imagine the hill fort alive. The hum of activity, the weight of expectation, the silent communication between builders, dwellers, and the land itself. And yet, like so many ancient constructions, Gallic hill forts remain partially hidden in plain sight, monumental puzzles whose full meaning continues to evade us, inviting reflection and wonder about what truths still lie buried within the earth and imagination of our distant ancestors. From the commanding heights of Gallic Hillforts, where earthen ramparts once defined power and territory, our exploration now turns westward to the lush, windswept coasts of southwestern Ireland, where the Atlantic Ocean rolls against cliffs and pastures. Here, amid verdant fields and grazing sheep, stands Drombeg, a small but exquisitely arranged stone circle that has long captured the curiosity of archaeologists, astronomers, and visitors alike. Drombeg is deceptively modest in scale. A circle of 17 standing stones, each roughly 1 meter tall, encircling a flattened central area just over 4 meters across. The stones are carefully positioned on the slight rise of a gentle slope, their edges weathered by millennia of wind, rain, and salt-laden air. The circle is complemented by a recumbent axial stone opposite its entrance, a small souterrain, and the remnants of burnt mounds and hearths scattered nearby. The landscape around Drombeg is quietly spectacular. Rolling hills sweep toward the sea, and distant mountains frame the horizon, making it impossible to ignore the deliberate placement of the circle within its surroundings. Radiocarbon dating places Drombeg in the late Bronze Age, approximately 1100 to 800 BCE, situating it in a period of intensive ritual activity across Ireland and the broader Atlantic fringe of Europe. Excavations have revealed evidence of burnt animal bones, pottery fragments and charred plant material within the circle, suggesting ritual feasting and possibly ceremonial offerings. The site's name, Drombeg, meaning small ridge in Irish, hints at its subtle elevation, yet its significance extends far beyond the modest mound it occupies. Mainstream interpretations classify Drombeg as a ritual site, perhaps used for seasonal ceremonies, burial rites, or ancestor worship. The circle's design appears to incorporate astronomical alignment. On the winter solstice, sunlight strikes the recumbent stone at sunrise, illuminating the opposite edge of the circle in a precise and deliberate way. This phenomenon has led scholars to suggest that Drombeg functioned as a kind of calendar, helping Bronze Age communities track the solar year and plan agricultural cycles, while simultaneously anchoring social and spiritual life. Yet the more one studies Drombeg, the deeper the mysteries become. The circle's scale is small compared to other Irish megalithic monuments, yet the precision of its construction suggests highly developed planning and measurement. How did these communities, with no written records or standardized tools, achieve such spatial accuracy? Was the winter solstice alignment intentional or coincidental? And if it was designed for observation, why choose a modest circle of stones rather than a larger, more conspicuous monument? The central hearth and evidence of feasting add another layer of intrigue. Burnt bones, including pig and cattle remains, and pottery fragments imply communal gatherings, possibly ritualized meals. Were these ceremonies seasonal celebrations, offerings to deities, or a combination of both? And what of the human presence suggested by small traces of burial or cremation nearby? The records are tantalizing but incomplete, leaving room for interpretation and speculation. Drombeg's simplicity also contributes to its enigmatic aura. Unlike more massive stone circles, it lacks enclosing banks, terraces, or monumental approaches. There is no clear defensive purpose, no urban or domestic structures associated with it, and yet the precision of the stone placement suggests a deliberate effort to shape human experience. Those who entered the circle would have moved along a carefully designed axis, guided by sight lines, the recumbent stone, and the patterns of light across the winter solstice. What did the Bronze Age participants feel as sunlight suddenly struck the opposite edge? Was it awe, reverence, or something entirely beyond our understanding? Speculative theories extend further. Some researchers have proposed that Drombeg functioned not only as a solar observatory, but also as an acoustic or performance space, designed to amplify sound during ritual chanting or drumming. Others suggest it may have encoded symbolic or territorial knowledge, the stones serving as markers of lineage, seasonal cycles, or mythic geography now lost to time. Its location on a ridge overlooking the surrounding landscape may have allowed communities to mark both spiritual and physical boundaries, linking human activity with the wider cosmos. Local folklore adds a poetic dimension to the mystery. The stones have been associated with stories of fairies and ancient gatherings, of beings frozen in stone for defying sacred laws. Like Al-Rajajil or Arbor Low, Drombeg exists within a continuum of myth and memory, where oral tradition preserves an intangible understanding of its significance, even as the original purpose has faded. The site's relationship with its environment is equally compelling. It is positioned to capture not only the winter solstice sunrise, but also expansive views of the surrounding hills and distant coastlines. Could the builders have intended it as a place of contemplation, a vantage point for observing both land and sky? Or were these visual alignments coincidental, the landscape co-opted by ritual rather than intentionally designed? Walking within Drombeg today, one senses a quiet energy. The stones are low, almost approachable, yet they command the imagination. The recumbent stone, in particular, frames the rising sun in winter months, a subtle demonstration of human ingenuity and awareness of celestial cycles. Despite its modest size, the circle creates a powerful impression of intentionality, design, and meaning, a microcosm of Bronze Age ritual thought rendered in stone. Drombeg, like Maeshowe, Gallic Hillforts, and Arbor Low, challenges our assumptions about prehistoric communities. It asks us to consider not only what was built, but why. How small groups could coordinate labor, encode knowledge, and integrate landscape, sky, and human activity into enduring monuments. Were these spaces purely ceremonial, practical, or a synthesis of both? Were the feasts and cremations at Drombeg central to the circle's purpose, or ancillary to something more profound? As sunlight spills across the stones, illuminating their rough-hewn surfaces, one is reminded that Bronze Age people, separated from us by thousands of years, engaged the landscape with intention, vision, and care. Drombeg endures as a quiet witness to their knowledge and beliefs, a site that invites reflection, wonder, and questions that remain unanswered. What did it mean to those who built it, and what truths remain encoded within the stones, waiting for us to perceive them? In its stillness, Drombeg continues to hold its secrets, as enduring and elusive as the Atlantic winds that sweep across the ridge. From the windswept ridge of Drombeg, where Bronze Age rituals once marked the passage of the sun, our journey now crosses continents and millennia, traveling south to the heart of Africa, to a remote and rugged plateau in Mpumalanga, South Africa. Here lies a site that challenges conventional timelines and expectations, a place known to some as Adam's Calendar. At first sight, Adam's Calendar appears deceptively ordinary, a flat expanse of weathered granite dotted with standing stones, grooves, and circular depressions. But a closer look reveals a deliberate arrangement, almost architectural in nature. The stones vary in size and shape, some upright, others laid horizontally, forming patterns that suggest alignment, measurement, or ceremonial purpose. The surface is smoothed in areas, and certain stones feature cup marks and carvings that catch the sunlight in striking ways, hinting at a purposeful interaction with light and shadow. Mainstream archaeology is cautious. Many scholars categorize Adam's Calendar as a product of indigenous African stoneworking traditions, possibly related to cattle enclosures or ritual sites dating to the Iron Age. Some argue that the patterns are coincidental or the result of centuries of erosion. And yet, the alignments and stone placements suggest a sophistication that seems, at first glance, difficult to attribute solely to practical or pastoral functions. Proponents of more speculative interpretations point to the site's apparent astronomical orientation. Adam's Calendar appears to align with the rising sun during the summer solstice, casting shadows across certain stones and depressions in ways that suggest deliberate observation. Could it have functioned as a calendar, tracking solar and seasonal changes in a time before written records, allowing communities to plan agricultural or ritual activities? The evidence is subtle, yet the patterns are compelling, inviting us to imagine the knowledge and foresight of the people who constructed it. The age of Adam's Calendar is hotly debated. Mainstream archaeologists hesitate to assign it a definitive prehistoric date, citing a lack of stratigraphic excavation or carbon-datable material. Fringe researchers, however, have proposed astonishingly early origins, suggesting the site may be tens of thousands of years old, far predating known African Iron Age cultures, and even challenging the conventional timeline of human technological development. Whether or not these claims hold, the suggestion alone provokes questions. Who could have arranged these stones with such precision, and for what purpose? One of the most striking features is the site's topography. The plateau is naturally flat, but the placement of stones follows a clear pattern, with certain stones marking directions and distances that hint at geometric knowledge. Grooves carved into the granite appear to channel water or sunlight, and circular depressions suggest focal points for gatherings, offerings, or observation. The human effort required to shape, move, and arrange these massive stones speaks to a society with both vision and organization, though evidence of such a society's broader settlements or infrastructure remains elusive. Local oral traditions lend a poetic layer to the mystery. The site is sometimes called the Calendar of the Ancients, and is linked in folklore to creation myths and ancestral wisdom. Some stories speak of a time when the first humans measured the movements of the heavens to understand life, death, and the cycles of the earth. These traditions, passed down for generations, hint at a knowledge encoded in stone, preserved through ritual memory rather than written language, echoing the sense of continuity seen at sites like Maeshowe, Drombeg, and the recumbent stone circles of Aberdeenshire. Some researchers have suggested that Adam's calendar may have functioned as a sacred ceremonial space, where astronomy, ritual, and social cohesion converged. The placement of stones could mark ritual pathways, processions, or focal points for offerings. Others speculate it may have been an educational site, a means of transmitting knowledge about the sun, seasons, and land to successive generations. The challenge lies in the absence of definitive artifacts. No ceramics, no tools, no inscriptions that can anchor the site to a precise cultural or chronological context. The comparison to other ancient structures is striking. Like the stone circles of Drombeg or Arbor Low, Adam's calendar demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of geometry, orientation, and human perception, suggesting that early communities across different continents independently sought to integrate sky, land, and ritual into durable forms. Yet here, in South Africa, the scale and isolation of the site amplify the mystery. Unlike European circles, which often sit within a broader landscape of settlements and ritual monuments, Adam's calendar stands largely alone, its context difficult to reconstruct, and its builders almost entirely anonymous. Walking among the stones today, one senses a dialogue across time. The surface is worn, yet the patterns remain. The sunlight casts sharp shadows in the winter months, illuminating grooves and depressions in ways that seem deliberate. Each stone appears to point toward the horizon, toward the movement of the sun, as though the builders intended not merely to occupy space, but to orchestrate experience, observation, and understanding. Adam's calendar, like Drombeg, Maeshowe, and the Gallic Hillforts, challenges our assumptions about ancient knowledge. It raises fundamental questions about the capabilities, priorities, and worldview of its builders. How did they understand geometry, astronomy, and landscape without modern tools? Why invest so much effort in a remote plateau? And what knowledge or ritual significance was encoded in these stones, now lost to us? As the African sun rises over the plateau, illuminating the weathered granite and casting long shadows across the standing stones, one is reminded that this site, quiet, isolated, yet deliberate, preserves a conversation between the earth and the sky, between human intention and cosmic cycles. Adam's calendar endures, inviting reflection and awe, and leaving us with the enduring question: what truths about our ancestors, their knowledge, and their understanding of the universe still lie hidden, waiting to be discovered among these stones? From the remote plains of South Africa, where Adam's calendar rests under the vast African sky, our exploration returns northward, crossing continents and oceans to the windswept archipelago of Orkney, Scotland. Here, amidst fertile pastures and rugged coastline, another monumental circle captures both imagination and inquiry: the Ring of Brodgar. Stretching across a shallow, natural loch, the Ring of Brodgar is a circle of 36 standing stones, originally numbering around 60, each carved from local sandstone and set into a deliberate ditch and bank that forms a perfect ceremonial enclosure. From a distance, the stones appear as silent sentinels, weathered by wind and rain over more than 5 millennia. Up close, the enormity of human effort becomes clear. Some stones tower over 4 meters, each carefully selected, shaped, and erected, their vertical presence commanding attention without the need for adornment or inscription. Archaeologists date the Ring of Brodgar to approximately 2500 to 2000 BCE, placing it squarely in the late Neolithic, contemporary with other Orkney monuments like Maeshowe and the Stones of Stennis. Its placement is striking. The circle sits on a narrow isthmus between 2 lochs, a natural stage framed by water and low hills, suggesting careful selection of both position and landscape. Excavations have revealed traces of human activity within and around the circle, including hearths, pottery fragments, and other ritual implements pointing to ceremonial use, yet no burials have been found within the circle itself, a curious divergence from other contemporaneous monuments. Mainstream interpretations classify the Ring of Brodgar as a ritual site, perhaps a ceremonial hub where communities gathered to mark seasonal cycles, observe celestial events, or participate in rites of social cohesion. Its precise dimensions, nearly 104 meters in diameter, and the surrounding ditch cut into bedrock to a depth of up to 3 meters, suggest an awareness of geometry, symmetry, and scale that is remarkable for Neolithic societies. But the question lingers: why undertake such an enormous labor investment in a circle that appears designed primarily for observation, ritual, or gathering, rather than defense or habitation? The astronomical potential of the Ring of Brodgar has fascinated researchers for decades. Alignments with the solstices and lunar cycles have been proposed, though the evidence is not conclusive. Could this have been a calendar, a celestial observatory, or a sacred marker of time? And if so, what knowledge lay encoded in these stones, shared among communities in ways that are now lost to history? The absence of written records leaves us only with the landscape and the stones themselves, silent witnesses to the intentions of their builders. The circle's design also raises questions about human organization and cultural complexity. Moving, shaping, and erecting stones of this size would have required coordinated labor, sophisticated understanding of leverage, and a shared vision. This implies not only technical skill, but also social structures capable of mobilizing resources, sustaining cooperation, and preserving knowledge over generations. Who were these people, and what inspired such monumental effort? And why, after millennia, did they leave their creation so intact yet enigmatic, offering no inscription or explanation? Local folklore adds a layer of intrigue, as it has with other prehistoric sites. Stories of giants, spirits, and ancient gatherings cling to the stones, imbuing them with a sense of life and power that endures in local imagination. The Ring of Brodgar is often described as a temple without walls, a place where the natural world and human intention intersect. Such narratives, though not literal history, preserve a sense of sacredness, a cultural memory that resonates with the circle's enduring mystery. Speculative theories extend even further. Some researchers propose that the stones functioned as acoustic amplifiers, designed to carry sound across the circle during ritual chanting or ceremonies. Others suggest that their placement encodes symbolic or cosmological knowledge, mapping the heavens, the seasons, or mythic geography onto the landscape. Unlike smaller stone circles, Brodgar's scale and precision hint at a deliberate attempt to organize both human experience and perception in a monumental, enduring form. The Ring of Brodgar also interacts with its environment in subtle ways. The low surrounding hills, the reflective surface of the lochs, and the circle's position along the isthmus all create a space that is both contained and expansive. Entering the circle today, one can feel the intent behind its design, a sense of enclosure without confinement, focus without restriction, and a dialogue between stone, sky, and human presence that has survived 5,000 years. Comparison with other sites highlights a recurring theme. Ancient communities across distant geographies sought to integrate observation, ritual, and landscape into enduring monuments. From Adam's Calendar in South Africa to Drombeg in Ireland, Maeshowe and the recumbent stone circles of Scotland, Arbor Low in England, and the Gallic Hillforts in Europe, there is a pattern of human ingenuity expressed in stone, an effort to map knowledge, belief, and experience into the physical world. Yet the Ring of Brodgar remains distinct in its scale, precision, and context, its purpose as elusive as it is compelling. Standing within the circle today, the human presence of thousands of years past seems palpable. Shadows stretch across the ground as the wind moves through the stones, and one can almost imagine the gatherings, ceremonies, and observations that once filled this space. Yet, despite extensive research and speculation, the Ring of Brodgar guards its secrets, offering insight without certainty, presence without explanation. The Ring of Brodgar, like Adam's Calendar, Drombeg, and the other monumental sites we have explored, challenges us to reconsider the capabilities and priorities of ancient peoples. It raises enduring questions about human ingenuity, ritual, and the desire to understand and organize the natural world. Why dedicate immense labor and social coordination to a circle of stones standing silently for millennia? Was it ceremonial, astronomical, political, or something beyond our comprehension? As the sun lowers over the Orkney horizon, casting long shadows across the ring and reflecting in the surrounding lochs, the stones seem to breathe with a quiet, enduring presence. They invite contemplation, curiosity, and wonder. And in their silent alignment with sky, land, and human effort, they remind us that some mysteries, like the Ring of Brodgar itself, remain deliberately and profoundly unresolved. From the windswept expanses of Orkney, where the Ring of Brodgar rises as a silent sentinel over lochs and low hills, our journey now turns southward to the emerald heart of Ireland, to the gentle slopes and hidden valleys of County Meath. Here, nestled among rolling hills, lies Loughcrew, a complex of passage tombs that combines architectural precision, astronomical alignment, and enigmatic artistry. A place where the Neolithic mind seems to reach toward the heavens. At first sight, Loughcrew appears modest, a series of low mounds scattered across the crest of a ridge. Yet beneath these grassy hills lie intricately constructed passage tombs, carved from large slabs of stone and carefully arranged to create interior chambers. The most striking of these, Cairn at Loughcrew, features a passage approximately 7 meters long, leading to a central chamber whose ceiling is adorned with abstract carvings, spirals, lozenges, and concentric circles etched into the stone millennia ago. Even after thousands of years, these motifs retain a hypnotic power, drawing the eye and suggesting meaning beyond the immediately observable. Archaeologists date the Loughcrew passage tombs to around 3,300 to 3000 BCE, placing them in the late Neolithic, contemporaneous with sites such as Newgrange and Noath. Carbon-dated materials indicate the tombs were used for cremation and deposition of the dead, suggesting ritual significance intertwined with memory and reverence for ancestors. Yet the tomb's design extends beyond mere burial. The precise orientation of passages toward the horizon hints at sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Most remarkable is the winter solstice phenomenon. At dawn on the shortest days of the year, sunlight penetrates the entrance of Cairn, traveling along the corridor to illuminate the back wall of the chamber, casting light upon the carvings in a dramatic display of solar alignment. This event transforms the interior into a luminous tableau, a moment when human intention, geometry, and the movement of the sun converge. How did Neolithic builders calculate this alignment with such precision, using only rudimentary tools and observational methods? And why was this phenomenon central to the tomb's design? Mainstream interpretations suggest that the alignment was likely symbolic, marking seasonal change, life cycles, and agricultural rhythms. In a society attuned to the land, the solar event may have represented renewal, the promise of light returning after the darkest days of winter, or a spiritual connection between the living and the dead. Yet the sheer artistry and precision of the carvings, combined with the astronomical alignment, hint at a complexity of thought that transcends practical necessity. The carved motifs themselves invite speculation. Spirals, lozenges, and concentric circles are recurring themes across Neolithic Europe, yet their meanings remain elusive. Some researchers interpret them as abstract representations of cosmology, cycles of life and death, or the passage of the sun and moon. Others propose that the carvings served as mnemonic devices for oral traditions, encoding knowledge in a visual language that only initiated members of the community could understand. Could these symbols preserve insights into ancient beliefs, calendars, or rituals that we are no longer able to fully decode? Loughcrew's location adds another layer of intrigue. Perched atop a ridge, the tombs overlook the surrounding valleys and distant hills, providing expansive sightlines that connect the mounds with the broader landscape. Were these vantage points chosen for strategic, symbolic, or spiritual reasons? Did the builders intend for their tombs to interact with the land as a living tableau, integrating the topography into ritual practice and observation of celestial cycles? Evidence of human activity around the mounds suggests repeated visitation over generations. The tombs were carefully constructed, sealed, and occasionally reopened to deposit cremated remains or offerings. The act of returning to these spaces, of marking them with art and architecture, implies a sustained cultural or spiritual significance, one that endured even as societies evolved and transformed. Speculative interpretations have extended even further. Some researchers suggest that Loughcrew, like other Neolithic passage tombs, may have functioned as an observatory, ritual center, and repository of knowledge all at once. The carvings and alignments could have encoded astronomical events, seasonal cycles, or even abstract cosmological principles. Others propose that the tomb's placement across multiple ridges and hills created a network of visual and symbolic connections, linking communities and reinforcing social cohesion. While direct evidence remains scarce, the interplay of art, architecture, and landscape invites contemplation of a highly sophisticated worldview. Walking within the passage today, the experience is immediate and profound. The low chamber amplifies the sense of enclosure, while sunlight, filtered through the entrance, casts shifting shadows across the carvings. The stones, worn by time yet still resonant, create a space where the movement of light, the presence of human hands, and the vastness of the sky outside converge. One can almost imagine the Neolithic participants, torchlight flickering, witnessing the solstice illumination and feeling an intimate connection between earth, sky, and community. Loughcrew, like the ring of Brodgar, Adam's calendar, and Drombeg, challenges our assumptions about prehistoric knowledge and ambition. It invites us to consider not only the technical skill of its builders, but the conceptual sophistication underlying their work, the integration of landscape, celestial cycles, ritual practice, and artistic expression into enduring monuments. How did these communities conceptualize time, space, and memory? Why invest immense labor in structures that combine practicality, artistry, and spirituality in ways we only partially understand? As the morning sun illuminates the ridge, spilling light across the carved slabs and distant hills, Loughcrew stands as a testament to human ingenuity and vision. The tombs remain silent yet eloquent, preserving the intentions, beliefs, and aspirations of a people separated from us by more than 5,000 years. And as the light moves, casting patterns on stone and earth, the questions endure. What did these Neolithic builders understand about the heavens, about life and death, and about the cycles of the world that we are only beginning to glimpse. In its quiet power, Loughcrew continues to guard its secrets, inviting reflection, awe, and the patient pursuit of understanding. From the sunlit ridges of Loughcrew, where Neolithic carvings capture the movement of winter's first light, our journey now travels southward to the gentle plains of western France. Here, in the Nouvelle Aquitaine region near the banks of the Bougon River, lies a complex of ancient monuments that has intrigued archaeologists and visitors for centuries, the Tumulus of Bougon. At first glance, the site presents a quiet, pastoral landscape, grassy fields punctuated by low earthen mounds. Yet beneath these seemingly unremarkable hills lies a sophisticated and deliberate arrangement of Neolithic tombs, forming one of the most remarkable megalithic cemeteries in Europe. The Bougon complex comprises 5 tumuli, each containing multiple chambers, corridors, and intricate stonework. Some mounds rise several meters above the ground, their earthen covering carefully shaped to blend with the natural terrain, suggesting not only construction skill but an intentional integration with the surrounding landscape. Excavations reveal that the tumuli date back to approximately 4,700 to 4,000 BCE, placing them among the earliest known megalithic constructions in Western Europe. Within their chambers, archaeologists have uncovered human remains, both cremated and uncremated, along with finely crafted stone axes, flint tools, pottery, and ornamental objects. These artifacts point to ritualized burial practices, reverence for the dead, and a complex societal structure capable of organizing labor, transporting stone, and coordinating construction over long periods. Yet even with these discoveries, the purpose, symbolism, and full significance of the Bougon tumuli remain elusive. The architecture of the tombs is striking in its precision. Corridors and chambers are constructed from large slabs of limestone, carefully fitted together to create durable spaces. Some chambers are elongated and rectangular, while others are circular or polygonal, suggesting variation in use, status, or symbolic meaning. Certain chambers feature side niches or small alcoves, possibly for offerings or the deposition of additional remains over time. The level of planning required for these designs raises immediate questions. How did Neolithic communities, without written records or advanced surveying tools, achieve such architectural sophistication? The tumuli's positioning within the landscape adds to the intrigue. The mounds are arranged across a relatively small area, yet their spatial distribution appears deliberate, as if forming a network of ritual or symbolic significance. Were these tombs aligned according to celestial events, seasonal cycles, or other natural markers? Some researchers suggest possible alignments with solstices or lunar phases, though the evidence remains inconclusive. Could the Bougon complex have served as a ceremonial center for observing the sky, guiding agricultural activity or reinforcing social cohesion through shared ritual? The artifacts within the tombs raise additional questions. Polished stone axes, often too finely made to serve purely utilitarian purposes, appear to have been symbolic, perhaps indicating status, power, or spiritual significance. Pottery fragments reveal intricate designs and patterns, hinting at aesthetic sensibilities and cultural expression. Yet, no inscriptions exist to explain their meaning. What beliefs, narratives, or cosmologies did these objects embody, and how were they understood by the communities who created them? Speculative interpretations extend further. Some researchers propose that the Bougon tumuli functioned not solely as burial sites, but as centers for ritualized gatherings, initiations, or ancestral veneration. The placement and design of chambers may have created intentional acoustics, allowing chants or ceremonies to resonate through stone and earth. Others suggest that the arrangement of mounds encodes symbolic or astronomical knowledge, with the tumuli acting as markers of time, lineage, or cosmological cycles. While direct evidence remains elusive, the complexity of the site suggests layers of meaning beyond the immediately observable. Local geography also deepens the mystery. The tumuli occupy a gently undulating terrain, with views across the surrounding plains and the meandering Bougon River. Did the location carry symbolic significance, connecting the living community with the landscape, water sources, or distant horizons? And how did these early builders conceptualize the relationship between life, death, and the land itself, embedding their understanding into enduring monuments of stone and earth? Walking among the mounds today, the experience is immersive. The tumuli rise subtly from the fields, their contours softened by millennia of grass and soil, yet their presence is undeniable. Entering a reconstructed chamber, one feels the intentionality of design, the careful placement of stones, the narrow corridors guiding movement, the alcoves that hint at ritual. The sense of human effort, planning, and reverence is palpable, yet the full meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. The Tumulus of Bougon, like Loughcrew, Drombeg, and the Ring of Brodgar, challenges modern assumptions about prehistoric societies. It demonstrates technical skill, aesthetic sensibility, and ritual sophistication in a culture that left no written records, forcing us to read meaning from stone, earth, and artifact alone. Were these structures purely funerary, or did they serve broader ceremonial, astronomical, or societal purposes? How much of their knowledge has been lost to time, and how much survives only in the silent geometry of stone and mound? As sunlight filters across the grassy slopes, highlighting subtle depressions and the edges of stone slabs, the Bougon tumuli continue to hold their secrets. They endure as both monuments and mysteries, silent witnesses to the people who built them, their beliefs, and their understanding of the world. And in that quiet endurance, we are left with the same profound question that accompanies all such ancient structures. What truths about human intention, cosmology, and memory remain encoded here, waiting to be discerned by those willing to look beyond the surface? From the rolling plains of western France, where the Tumulus of Bougon rises as a testament to early Neolithic ritual and ingenuity, our journey now turns eastward, across the rugged terrain of the Armenian highlands. Here, perched atop a windswept plateau near the Ararat Valley, lies a monument that has perplexed historians, archaeologists, and travelers for generations, Zorats Karer, often called the Armenian Stonehenge. At first sight, Zorats Karer appears as a sprawling field of upright stones, stretching across a gentle hill. Hundreds of megaliths, many standing several meters tall, are arranged in lines, clusters, and circles. Some stones are narrowly spaced, others set apart, creating patterns that appear both deliberate and chaotic, a juxtaposition that immediately arrests the eye. The stones themselves are simple in form, rectangular or roughly hewn slabs of volcanic rock, yet their placement hints at intentionality and purpose. Walking among them, it is impossible not to sense the human effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these megaliths in a landscape that is both beautiful and unforgiving. Archaeologists date Zorats Karer to the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age, roughly 3000 to 2500 BCE, though precise chronologies remain debated. Excavations have revealed remnants of pottery, obsidian tools, and traces of fire pits, indicating human activity and repeated visitation over generations. Yet the function of the site remains elusive. Some stones appear deliberately aligned, suggesting observation of celestial bodies, the sun, moon, or stars, while others seem oriented according to local topography or unseen markers. Mainstream interpretations often frame Zorats Karer as a burial site, with some evidence of interments or cremated remains discovered among the stones. Yet unlike other prehistoric cemeteries, such as the Tumulus of Bougon or Loughcrew, the scale and arrangement of the stones at Zorats Karer seem disproportionate to purely funerary purposes. The precise linear alignments and clusters raise the possibility of astronomical observation, ritual activity, or even a combination of both. Could this have been a site where the cycles of the sky were carefully tracked, where ritual, timekeeping, and social cohesion intersected? The question of astronomical alignment is especially compelling. Researchers have noted that certain rows of stones correspond roughly with the positions of the rising and setting sun during solstices and equinoxes. Others suggest potential alignments with lunar cycles, or even with prominent stars. If intentional, this implies a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics long before written records or formalized calendars. How did these communities conceptualize time, space, and motion of the heavens? What knowledge guided the placement of stones across this rugged plateau? Yet for every alignment identified, another mystery emerges. Some stones are tilted or missing, and over millennia, natural forces may have shifted them slightly, obscuring the original intent. The interplay of human action and environmental change makes it difficult to discern purpose with certainty. Could the apparent disorder also have been intentional, creating a rhythm of patterns and spaces that structured movement, ritual processions, or observation within the site? Local legend and folklore add another layer to Zorats Karer's allure. Stories passed down through generations speak of the site as sacred ground, a meeting place for ancestors, or a portal between the earthly and spiritual realms. Some myths describe the stones as petrified humans, punished for unknown transgressions, echoing a motif found in other megalithic cultures across Europe and Asia. While such tales cannot be taken as literal history, they reveal enduring human fascination with the site and hint at the powerful presence the stones have exerted over time. Speculative interpretations extend further. Some researchers propose that Zorats Karer functioned as a multifunctional center, simultaneously a ceremonial complex, observatory, and repository of knowledge. The distribution of stones may encode symbolic information about cosmology, agricultural cycles, or territorial boundaries. Others suggest acoustic properties within certain stone alignments, possibly amplifying sound during ritual gatherings, a feature mirrored in megalithic sites elsewhere. The plateau itself seems part of the design. From the highest stones, one can see valleys, ridges, and distant mountains, suggesting that the site's builders may have intended to create a dialogue between the monument and its landscape. Could the positioning of Zorats Karer have communicated meaning across distance, linking this plateau to other sacred or practical locations in the region? And if so, what broader network of knowledge or ritual practice might it have been part of, now lost to the ages? Walking among the stones today, one is struck by the combination of scale, isolation, and pattern. The site feels both deliberate and wild, human and elemental, inviting reflection on the minds and hands that shaped it. Shadows stretch across rough-hewn slabs as sunlight moves across the plateau, highlighting details in the rock and emphasizing the site's geometric and spatial rhythms. The stones themselves seem to hold stories, but the absence of inscriptions or written records leaves interpretation to observation, intuition, and speculation. Zorats Karer, like the Tumulus of Bougon, Loughcrew, and the Ring of Brodgar, challenges assumptions about ancient knowledge, ambition, and ritual practice. It demonstrates technical skill, astronomical awareness, and social coordination in a society that left no written record of its methods or intentions. Why erect hundreds of stones in this remote landscape? Were they markers of time, ceremonial tools, territorial symbols, or something more profound, integrating cosmology, community, and memory into a single monumental expression? As the Armenian wind sweeps across the plateau, rustling grasses and echoing off stone, Zorats Karer endures as a silent witness to human effort and imagination. It invites contemplation, reflection, and awe, while withholding definitive answers. And in its quiet, enduring presence, it poses the same compelling question that accompanies all these ancient structures. What knowledge, ritual, or cosmology remains encoded here, hidden within stone and shadow, waiting for those willing to look, observe, and wonder. From the windswept highlands of Armenia, where Zorats Karer rises as a testament to human ambition and celestial observation, our journey now stretches far eastward, across continents and millennia, to the rugged plains of northern China. Here, on the Loess Plateau, lies a site whose scale and sophistication defy simple explanation. Shimao, an ancient city that whispers of a civilization both formidable and enigmatic. At first glance, Shimao appears as a sprawling complex of earthen walls, stone ramparts, and terraced mounds, partially eroded by time, yet unmistakably monumental. Covering nearly 4.25 square kilometers, it is the largest known Neolithic city in China, with walls constructed from carefully compacted earth, standing up to 16 meters high in places, and reinforced with stone facing in key locations. Inside, researchers have uncovered a network of streets, residential areas, storage facilities, ceremonial platforms, and what appear to be palatial structures. The sheer scale of construction suggests not only advanced engineering, but a centralized social organization capable of mobilizing and sustaining massive labor forces. Excavations date Shimao to around 2300 to 1800 BCE, during the late Neolithic period, predating or overlapping with early dynastic cultures in other parts of China. Its strategic position atop a plateau provides commanding views over the surrounding plains, a vantage point that implies both defensive consideration and symbolic prominence. Yet, while some aspects of Shimao's function appear practical — fortification, urban habitation, resource storage — other features invite deeper contemplation, hinting at ceremonial, social, and possibly astronomical significance. The city's walls are not merely functional barriers, they are monumental expressions of power and sophistication. Stone foundations, massive gateways, and meticulously constructed terraces indicate planning on a scale rarely seen in Neolithic contexts. Certain walls align with prominent hills, ridges, or cardinal directions, suggesting an awareness of orientation and landscape that may extend beyond defense. Could these alignments encode cosmological knowledge, marking solstices, equinoxes, or significant celestial events? And if so, what was the relationship between the city's planners, its inhabitants, and the cycles of the sky? Within Shimao, archaeologists have uncovered massive stone platforms, intricate carvings, and evidence of jade and other exotic materials, indicating far-reaching trade networks or the presence of elite classes with specialized knowledge. The discovery of human and animal remains, often deliberately placed, suggests ritual practices, though the precise nature of these ceremonies remains unclear. Were these spaces for ancestor worship, community gatherings, or more arcane forms of ritual? The variety and sophistication of material culture hint at a complex society that engaged with both the tangible and symbolic dimensions of life. Speculative interpretations have extended beyond conventional archaeology. Some researchers propose that Shimao was more than a city, perhaps a ceremonial hub where political authority, astronomical observation, and ritual activity converged. The placement of walls, gates, and platforms could have created processional routes or sightlines to celestial events, echoing patterns seen in far-distant Neolithic sites such as Adam's Calendar in South Africa or Drombeg in Ireland. Did the builders of Shimao understand cycles of the sun and moon, and did they integrate this knowledge into the city's layout and daily life? The integration of natural features into Shimao's design adds further intrigue. The city is constructed along the contours of the plateau, with terraces and fortifications that follow the rise and fall of the land. This careful adaptation suggests both practical ingenuity and a symbolic relationship with the environment. Was the city intended to harmonize with the landscape in a spiritual sense, reflecting cosmological beliefs? Or was it a purely pragmatic approach to fortification and resource management? Human imagination is challenged not only by the scale, but by the precision. Moving and shaping massive stone blocks, compacting earth to create towering walls, and coordinating labor across multiple terraces would have required sophisticated social organization. What forms of governance, ritual hierarchy, or knowledge transmission enabled such feats? How were labor, materials, and architectural knowledge coordinated without written records, standardized tools, or centralized authority as we understand it today? Walking through Shimao's remnants, one can sense the deliberate orchestration of space. The streets, platforms, and gates suggest movement and activity designed to channel human experience, while the monumental walls convey authority, protection, and perhaps spiritual resonance. The site evokes questions familiar across prehistoric monuments. How did its builders understand their environment, the cosmos, and their own society? And how much of this knowledge was encoded in stone and earth, now weathered and partially lost? Shimao, like Zorats Karer, the Tumulus of Bougon, Loughcrew, and the Ring of Brodgar, challenges modern assumptions about ancient human capabilities. It demonstrates engineering skill, social organization, and possibly astronomical awareness in a context that predates much of recorded history. Were its walls purely defensive, its terraces purely practical, or was the city an integrated expression of ritual, observation, and authority? Could its layout, material culture, and spatial relationships have encoded knowledge now lost to time? As sunlight glances across the plateau, highlighting the terraced walls and the remnants of stone foundations, Shimao stands as a monumental testament to human vision and ingenuity. Its stones, earthworks, and pathways preserve the presence of a people who conceived on a grand scale, yet left no written records to explain their intentions. And as shadows lengthen across the plateau, one is left with the same enduring question that accompanies all ancient structures of mystery. What truths about society, cosmology, and human ambition remain hidden here, waiting to be discovered by those patient enough to observe and wonder? From the expansive plains of northern China, where Shimao rises as a testament to Neolithic ingenuity and social organization, our journey now turns southward across the Mediterranean Sea to the sun-baked landscapes of Malta. Here, amid the limestone cliffs and rolling fields of Gozo, stands one of the oldest and most enigmatic megalithic structures in the world, Ġgantija, a temple complex whose stones have weathered millennia yet continue to inspire awe and wonder. At first sight, Ġgantija commands attention not through height, but through scale and presence. The megaliths, some weighing over 50 tons, are arranged in a series of monumental, semicircular structures, forming the foundations of twin temples connected by a central corridor. The walls, constructed from massive blocks of coralline limestone, rise several meters high, and their careful placement reveals an understanding of stability, weight distribution, and architectural planning that seems astonishing for a society without metal tools or advanced machinery. Walking among these stones today, it is almost impossible to imagine how prehistoric builders could have transported and erected such enormous monoliths with only basic implements and sheer human ingenuity. Radiocarbon dating places Ġgantija at approximately 3,600 to 3,200 BCE, situating it in the Maltese Neolithic period, one of the earliest eras of monumental architecture in Europe. Excavations have revealed altars, libation channels, animal bones, and pottery fragments, suggesting ritualized activity that may have included offerings, feasting, or ceremonial gatherings. Yet, despite decades of study, the precise purpose of the temple remains elusive. Was it solely a place of worship, a community center, or perhaps a celestial observatory intertwined with religious practice? The layout of Ġgantija is both deliberate and symbolic. The twin temples face southeast, with entrances designed to welcome the first light of the rising sun during solstices, bathing the interior in natural illumination. Such alignment suggests that the builders had not only architectural skill but also an understanding of the sun's cycles, linking their structures to the rhythms of the natural world. Could the temples have functioned as solar markers, tracking the passage of seasons, guiding agricultural activity, or marking sacred moments within the community calendar? Beyond their astronomical orientation, the stones themselves bear the marks of artistry and ritual. Curved walls create intimate chambers within the larger structure, possibly delineating sacred spaces or stages of ceremonial practice. Certain stones feature carved motifs, spirals, grooves, and cup marks that hint at symbolic language, though their precise meaning remains undeciphered. Were these decorative, functional, or a form of encoded knowledge meant for initiates? And how much did the spatial arrangement of the temples convey information about cosmology, spirituality, or social hierarchy? The sheer weight and volume of the megaliths continue to provoke questions. Transporting these stones from nearby quarries, shaping them with primitive tools, and erecting them in precise alignment would have required extensive labor, coordination, and expertise. What social structures and organizational strategies made this possible? Did the builders possess specialized knowledge passed down through generations, or was the skill distributed widely across the community? And why invest such monumental effort in constructions whose meaning now lies largely beyond our comprehension? Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some scholars propose that Ġgantija and other Maltese temples were centers of fertility worship, based on the discovery of figurines interpreted as female deities and evidence of ritual feasting. Others suggest that the temples served multiple functions, combining religious, communal, and perhaps astronomical or calendrical roles. The twin nature of the temples themselves is intriguing, a reflection of duality, balance, or cosmological symbolism. And what did the ancients intend for the experience of those who entered these monumental spaces, moving through chambers, corridors, and courtyards designed with deliberate flow and proportion? The surrounding landscape also plays a role in the mystery. Positioned on elevated terrain, Ġgantija overlooks valleys and plains, connecting the temple to its environment and possibly providing sight lines to other Neolithic sites across Gozo. Was this positioning intentional, creating a network of sacred sites across the island? And how did the builders perceive the relationship between earth, sky, and human activity, embedding that understanding in the stones themselves? Walking among Ġgantija's massive walls today, the sense of human ambition and ingenuity is palpable. The spaces between stones, the curvature of walls, and the alignment of entrances suggest a culture deeply attuned to environment, ritual, and celestial cycles. The physical effort alone, quarrying, transporting, and erecting megaliths, testifies to social cohesion and purpose, yet the spiritual or symbolic meaning remains largely opaque, tantalizingly out of reach. Ġgantija, like Shimao, Zorats Karer, and the Ring of Brodgar, challenges our understanding of prehistoric human capability. It demonstrates not only technical skill and planning, but also an awareness of time, space, and natural cycles encoded into monumental architecture. How did these early builders conceptualize the cosmos, their society, and the sacred? What beliefs or knowledge guided their hands, and how much of it has been irretrievably lost to time? As sunlight sweeps across the limestone, casting long shadows through the twin temples and illuminating their worn surfaces, Ġgantija endures as a silent witness to human creativity, devotion, and vision. The stones, immovable yet expressive, preserve the presence of a people separated from us by more than 5 millennia, and in their enduring stillness, they pose the same profound question echoed at every ancient site we have explored. What truths about human intention, spirituality, and understanding remain hidden here, waiting for those patient enough to observe, reflect, and wonder? From the sun-soaked island of Gozo, where Ġgantija rises as a testament to Neolithic ingenuity and devotion, our journey now sweeps westward across the Mediterranean to the rugged landscapes of Corsica. Here, amid jagged hills, limestone plateaus, and the sparse beauty of the interior, lies a series of megalithic monuments that has intrigued archaeologists, travelers, and local communities alike. The Dolmen cluster of Corsica. At first sight, the dolmens appear deceptively simple. Low, stone-built chambers, each formed from massive upright slabs capped with horizontal stones, emerge from the rolling terrain as subtle disruptions in the landscape. Yet closer inspection reveals a deliberate arrangement. Clusters of dolmens spread across plateaus, hilltops, and narrow valleys, their orientation and spacing suggesting intention rather than random placement. Some stones are rough-hewn, others carefully shaped to interlock with neighboring slabs, creating chambers of remarkable stability. Even after thousands of years of weathering, the craftsmanship evokes both awe and curiosity. Archaeologists date many of the Corsican dolmens to the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, roughly between 4000 and 2500 BCE. Within these chambers, traces of human remains, pottery fragments, stone tools, and occasional ornaments have been found, pointing to ritualized funerary activity. Yet the simplicity of the chambers belies a deeper complexity. The orientation of some dolmens, often facing eastward or aligned along sight lines connecting distant hills and valleys, suggests that their placement may have held symbolic, spiritual, or even astronomical significance. Were these structures meant to interact with the rising sun, the shifting constellations, or the rhythm of the seasons? The clustering of dolmens across Corsica adds to the mystery. Rather than a single monumental complex, these structures form networks, often connected by natural features, ridges, streams, or prominent rock formations. Could these networks have delineated territorial boundaries, marked sacred landscapes, or guided communal rituals? The effort required to transport and erect massive stones across such rugged terrain implies social coordination and technical knowledge. What motivated these early communities to invest so much labor in structures that seem, in scale and function, disproportionately large compared to the size of their settlements? Mainstream interpretations primarily emphasize funerary purposes. The dolmens served as tombs, sacred spaces for the interment of the dead, and possibly markers of ancestral reverence. Yet many aspects remain unexplained. Why were some dolmens isolated on hilltops while others cluster in valleys? Certain stones exhibit precise shaping, while others seem chosen for mass and weight alone. What principles guided these choices? And what messages, if any, were encoded in the orientation, dimensions, or arrangement of these chambers? Speculative theories extend beyond funerary function. Some researchers suggest that the dolmen clusters may have served as ceremonial centers, ritual pathways, or even early observatories. The placement of dolmens on elevated terrain or along sightlines could have allowed observation of the sun, moon, and stars, guiding agricultural calendars or seasonal ceremonies. Others propose that the dolmens marked nodes of spiritual or cultural significance, creating a landscape imbued with meaning, memory, and social cohesion. Could these stones have represented a dialogue between human communities and the natural world, a way of inscribing knowledge and belief into the landscape itself? Evidence from the Corsican interior deepens the intrigue. Certain dolmens contain cup marks, grooves, or other carvings etched into the stone. Their purpose is uncertain. Do they represent symbolic motifs, ritual channels for libations, or mnemonic devices for oral traditions? The markings bear resemblance to those found at other Neolithic sites across Europe, from Brittany to Malta, suggesting a shared symbolic vocabulary, or at least parallel development. How far did these cultural influences extend, and what knowledge or beliefs were traveling along with them? The surrounding environment plays a role in the mystery of the Corsican dolmens. The island's terrain is rugged, with steep valleys, limestone cliffs, and expansive plateaus. Transporting stones, sometimes weighing several tons, across such terrain would have required sophisticated planning, tools, and cooperative effort. Did the builders select specific locations for their visibility, spiritual resonance, or connection to natural features? And to what extent did the physical landscape itself shape ritual practice and social organization? Walking among the dolmens today, one senses both scale and subtlety. Some chambers are almost hidden, their stones blending with surrounding rock and vegetation, while others rise prominently, catching sunlight and shadow in ways that accentuate their presence. Moving between these ancient markers, it becomes clear that the builders were not merely creating tombs, but shaping human experience, guiding movement, framing sightlines, and creating spaces that resonate with both the physical and the symbolic. The experience is immersive, quiet yet charged, ordinary yet extraordinary. Comparisons to other megalithic sites around the world deepen the mystery. Like Ġgantija, Shimao, or Zorats Karer, the Corsican dolmens demonstrate technical skill, social organization, and an awareness of landscape and possibly celestial cycles. Yet their modest scale and dispersed arrangement set them apart. Could these clusters represent a different societal model, one emphasizing decentralized ritual practice, territorial markers, or networks of memory and power? And how did these communities maintain continuity of knowledge, belief, and skill across generations without written records? Local traditions and oral histories contribute further layers of intrigue. Folk tales often describe the stones as having supernatural origin or as markers of sacred sites, suggesting that the dolmens retained symbolic significance long after their construction. While these stories cannot be verified as historical fact, they reveal enduring cultural memory and highlight the power these structures have exerted on human imagination. What did the builders intend for the long-term presence of their creations? And how did successive generations reinterpret or preserve their meaning? The Corsican dolmen clusters, like the Neolithic monuments of Malta, France, and northern China, challenge our assumptions about prehistoric knowledge, ambition, and ritual. They remind us that early societies were capable of coordinating labor, observing celestial and environmental cycles, and creating spaces that blended functionality with symbolic resonance. How did these communities perceive life, death, and the cosmos? What messages were encoded in stone, deliberately or intuitively, that we are only beginning to glimpse? As the afternoon sun moves across the Corsican hills, casting shifting shadows over the low mounds and towering slabs, the dolmens exude a quiet, enduring presence. They stand as both monuments and mysteries, preserved through millennia, yet withholding their full story. And as the wind rustles through sparse vegetation and sunlight glances along stone surfaces, one is left with the same profound question echoed at every ancient site. What truths about human intention, knowledge, and belief remain hidden here, waiting for those patient enough to observe, reflect, and wonder? From the rugged hills and dolmen-strewn plateaus of Corsica, where stone markers whisper of ritual, memory, and human ingenuity, our journey returns once more to the Maltese archipelago, where Ġgantija's monumental temples have long stood as a testament to Neolithic ambition. Here, on the island of Gozo, a quieter, yet equally compelling sight awaits. Tal-Qadi, a cluster of temples whose stones speak of ritual, community, and mystery across more than 5 millennia. At first sight, the Tal-Qadi Temples appear understated, their low, weathered walls blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding limestone terraces. Yet upon closer inspection, the meticulous construction becomes apparent. The structures are composed of coralline limestone blocks, carefully shaped and fitted to form rectangular and semicircular chambers, interconnected by narrow corridors and courtyards. Though many of the walls have partially collapsed over centuries, the remaining stones reveal a sophisticated understanding of proportion, weight, and spatial organization. Walking among them, one senses an intentionality that transforms a simple collection of stones into a coherent, purposeful architectural ensemble. Radiocarbon dating situates Tal-Qadi in the Maltese Temple period, approximately 3,600 to 2,500 BCE, contemporary with larger and more famous sites such as Ġgantija and the Tarxian temples. Excavations have uncovered artifacts including pottery, flint tools, and fragments of decorated altars, as well as evidence of animal bones and possible libation channels. These finds suggest ritual activity, likely involving offerings, feasting, or ceremonial gatherings. Yet unlike larger complexes, Tal-Qadi is intimate in scale, creating spaces that feel simultaneously personal and communal. What decisions guided the builders to create such a measured, human-scaled environment within a landscape already rich with monumental architecture? The architectural design of Tal-Qadi is deliberate and symbolic. The temples feature multiple chambers, some circular, others rectangular, connected by corridors that channel movement and focus attention. Certain entrances align with natural light, casting illumination upon inner altars at specific times of day, hinting at awareness of solar patterns. Could these alignments mark seasonal cycles, ritual moments, or agricultural thresholds? And how did the builders reconcile practical construction with symbolic expression, embedding layers of meaning into stone that have endured for millennia? The stones themselves offer further intrigue. While lacking the monumental scale of Ġgantija, the coralline blocks of Tal-Qadi are carefully dressed, some featuring carved motifs, spirals, chevrons, and cup marks, echoing patterns found across the Maltese temple network. Their purpose remains uncertain, symbolic, ritualistic, or mnemonic. Could they have functioned as a visual language, encoding cosmology, lineage, or spiritual principles comprehensible only to the initiated? The recurrence of motifs across different temple sites suggests shared cultural knowledge, yet the precise meaning has been lost to time, leaving only speculation and observation. Tal-Qadi's position within the Gozo landscape adds another layer to its mystery. The temples occupy a terrace that overlooks valleys and low hills, integrating natural topography into their design. Did the builders select this site for visibility, symbolic prominence, or access to resources? Were they aligning the temple with distant landmarks or celestial events, creating a dialogue between human construction, the natural world, and the cosmos? The careful integration of site and structure implies a worldview in which landscape, ritual, and social identity were inseparable. Speculative interpretations suggest Tal-Qadi may have served as a multifunctional space. Beyond funerary or ritual purposes, the temples could have been centers for communal decision-making, instruction, or observation of celestial events. The careful orientation and spatial sequencing of chambers suggest that movement through the temple may have been part of a ritual experience, a processional journey that guided participants through symbolic or sacred stages. Could the temple have functioned as both a spiritual locus and a social one, bridging the sacred and everyday life in a single architectural expression? Walking among Tal-Qadi's low walls and weathered corridors, the experience is immersive and contemplative. Sunlight filters through the gaps in stone, highlighting grooves and carvings that have survived thousands of years. Shadows stretch across the temple's terraces, emphasizing the interplay of structure, landscape, and light. One can almost imagine participants moving deliberately through the chambers, observing rituals, making offerings, or simply pausing to reflect within these quiet, intentional spaces. The architecture itself guides perception, shaping both physical movement and experiential understanding. Tal-Qadi, like other ancient structures we have explored, Ġgantija, Shimao, Zorats Karer, and the Dolmen clusters of Corsica, challenges our assumptions about prehistoric societies. It demonstrates that Neolithic communities were capable of sophisticated architectural planning, ritual innovation, and integration of environment, cosmology, and social practice. How did these builders conceptualize time, space, and sacredness? How were knowledge, skill, and spiritual understanding transmitted across generations without written records? And what insights might remain encoded in the stones, in orientations, carvings, and spatial sequences that we are only beginning to perceive? As the afternoon light shifts across the Gozo landscape, casting long shadows over low walls and inner chambers, Tal-Qadi stands as a monument both intimate and enduring. Its stones preserve the presence of a community, their beliefs and their ambitions, yet they guard their full meaning with silence. And in that quiet persistence, the temples pose the same enduring question that echoes across all these ancient sites. What truths about human intention, ritual, and understanding remain hidden here, waiting for those patient enough to observe, reflect, and wonder? From the quiet terraces of Gozo, where the Tal-Qadi Temples bear witness to centuries of ritual, contemplation, and architectural ingenuity, our journey now turns to the eastern Mediterranean, to the island of Cyprus. Here, nestled on a gently sloping hill overlooking the fertile plains near the Moroni River, lies a site that captures both the imagination and the curiosity of archaeologists. Khirokitia, one of the most remarkable and well-preserved prehistoric settlements in Europe. At first glance, Khirokitia appears deceptively modest. Circular stone foundations, low and unassuming, cluster together in dense, organized patterns, forming streets and courtyards that hint at complex social planning. Each dwelling consists of a circular wall, often reinforced with carefully stacked limestone blocks, and a narrow entrance that seems designed to control access, light, or airflow. Despite their simplicity, these structures display a level of planning and community coordination that is remarkable for a society dating back nearly 7,000 years. Walking among the foundations today, one can sense the rhythm of daily life long vanished, the movement of people, the organization of families, the quiet hum of communal existence embedded into the very layout of the settlement. Khirokitia dates to approximately 7,000 to 6,000 BCE during the Neolithic period, placing it among the earliest known permanent settlements on the island. Excavations have uncovered hearths, storage pits, stone tools, clay figurines, and evidence of domestic animals and cultivated plants, revealing a community that practiced agriculture, animal husbandry, and craft production. Yet, while much about daily life can be inferred, many aspects of Khirokitia remain puzzling. How did these early Cypriots organize themselves socially? What beliefs or rituals governed their lives? And how were such practices reflected in the built environment? The circular design of the dwellings is particularly striking. Each house, often just a few meters in diameter, contains evidence of careful internal organization. Hearths positioned for maximum efficiency, storage spaces integrated into walls, and sometimes niches or platforms that may have held ritual or symbolic significance. Was the circular form purely practical, providing stability and warmth, or did it hold cosmological or spiritual meaning? Could the repetition of circularity across the settlement reflect a worldview in which geometry, pattern, and communal cohesion were inseparable? The density of the settlement also invites contemplation. Houses are tightly clustered, forming lanes and small courtyards that suggest social interaction and collective planning. Yet, unlike later urban centers, Khirokitia lacks apparent monumental structures or ceremonial complexes. Does this absence indicate a society focused on egalitarian community life, where ritual and social cohesion were embedded in daily interaction rather than concentrated in grand temples? Or might some form of ceremonial practice have been integrated within the domestic sphere, leaving traces subtle enough to elude archaeological detection? Artifacts recovered at Khirokitia further complicate the picture. Small figurines, often female in form, hint at symbolic or religious activity, while the presence of imported materials suggests networks of exchange or contact with other communities. Were these figurines fertility symbols, objects of devotion, or tools for teaching and memory within the community? And how extensive were the connections between Khirokitia and other Neolithic settlements in the eastern Mediterranean, influencing technology, belief systems, or social organization? The settlement's location, perched above the Moroni River Valley, also raises questions. The elevated position provides natural defense, a commanding view of surrounding fields, and perhaps symbolic significance, placing the community between earth and sky. Did the selection of this site reflect pragmatic considerations? Proximity to water, arable land, and trade routes? Or did it carry deeper ritual or cosmological importance? And how did the inhabitants perceive the relationship between their built environment and the natural landscape, embedding meaning in every stone and pathway? Speculative interpretations extend to the overall organization of Khirokitia. The careful clustering of houses, the alignment of entrances, and the potential orientation of certain structures suggest an understanding of spatial order that may have encoded social, ritual, or practical information. Could the settlement have functioned as a miniature cosmology, a spatial reflection of social hierarchy, celestial cycles, or seasonal rhythms? Did the movement through narrow lanes, courtyards, and circular dwellings create a pattern of experience designed to reinforce communal cohesion or spiritual awareness? Khirokitia also challenges assumptions about technological capability and labor organization. The construction of circular stone walls, the careful selection and stacking of irregular limestone blocks, and the integration of functional features such as hearths, storage, and defensive positioning imply sophisticated knowledge and social coordination. How did a community without metal tools or formalized engineering knowledge achieve such durable construction? And what cultural systems, apprenticeship, tradition, ritualized labor, facilitated the transmission of these skills across generations? Walking among the remains today, one senses a deep human presence. The low walls of dwellings, partially restored in some areas, trace the outline of life that was intimate yet communal. The settlement conveys both order and fluidity, streets that guide movement, courtyards that foster interaction, and circular homes that mediate the boundary between private and public life. It is an immersive experience, evoking questions about the rhythm of Neolithic existence and the priorities of a society that balanced practicality, social cohesion, and symbolic expression in stone. Khirokitia, like Tal-Qadi, Ġgantija, Shimao, and the Dolmen clusters of Corsica, forces us to reconsider what we understand about prehistoric societies. It demonstrates that early human communities were capable of advanced architectural planning, social organization, and symbolic or ritual expression. Yet it resists straightforward interpretation. How did these people conceive of community, the sacred, and the natural world? What knowledge or belief systems informed their daily lives and spatial arrangements? And what remains hidden, encoded in the stone foundations, pathways, and hearths, waiting for those willing to observe and reflect? As sunlight shifts across the gently rolling hill, casting long shadows across the circular foundations, Khirokitia endures as a silent witness to human ingenuity, ritual, and resilience. Its stones, modest yet deliberate, preserve traces of lives once lived, questions once pondered, and a worldview that remains largely inaccessible to us. And in the quiet persistence of this ancient settlement, we are left with the same profound inquiry that accompanies all the sites we have explored. What truths about human intention, belief, and experience remain buried here, waiting for patient observation and imagination to bring them to light? From the sun-drenched plains of Cyprus, where Khirokitia's circular dwellings preserve the rhythm of early Neolithic life, our journey now turns westward across the Mediterranean to the rugged coast of northwestern Spain. Perched atop a commanding hill overlooking the Minho River Valley and the Atlantic coastline, stands Castro de Santa Trega, a fortified settlement that has guarded its secrets for millennia. At first glance, the site is striking in its integration with the landscape. The settlement occupies a steep, rocky promontory, its contours following the natural slope of the hill. Stone walls and terraces trace the outline of dwellings and communal spaces, creating a sense of organized complexity that speaks to careful planning and social cohesion. From this vantage point, one can survey the surrounding valleys, rivers, and distant shores, a perspective that suggests both practical and symbolic considerations. The strategic location provided defense, control of trade routes, and perhaps even a spiritual connection to the land and sky. Castro de Santa Trega dates to the Late Bronze Age and Iron Age, roughly between 1000 BCE and the 1st century CE. Excavations have revealed circular and oval stone houses, storage pits, granaries, and traces of hearths, illustrating a community that practiced agriculture, animal husbandry, and artisanal craft. Yet while much about daily life can be inferred, many aspects of the settlement remain enigmatic. Why were the dwellings circular or oval, and why were they clustered so deliberately along the terraced slopes? What social or ritual principles governed the layout of this fortified hilltop? The walls themselves are both functional and intriguing. Constructed from local stone, they range from low retaining terraces to formidable defensive barriers, with carefully placed entrances and winding passageways. Their orientation seems to follow the natural contours of the hill, but might they also have been designed with symbolic intent, reflecting social hierarchy, spiritual principles, or an understanding of astronomy? Certain walls and terraces create sight lines to distant peaks and the coastline, suggesting that the builders may have considered visual connectivity as part of their planning. Could the positioning of these stones encode knowledge of geography, cosmology, or social structure that has been lost to time? The arrangement of dwellings and streets within the settlement adds to the mystery. Narrow lanes wind between homes, leading to central courtyards and communal spaces. Some dwellings feature small platforms or niches, perhaps for ritual use, storage, or social gatherings. Was the spatial layout purely practical, maximizing defensibility and efficient use of space, or did it also embody cultural and symbolic knowledge? Could movement through these pathways have been ritualized, creating a choreography of social interaction, observation, and experience? Archaeological findings hint at both daily life and spiritual practice. Pottery fragments, tools, and ornaments reveal material culture and trade networks, while animal bones and traces of hearths point to diet and communal feasting. Yet there is little direct evidence of large ceremonial structures within Castro de Santa Trega. Does this suggest that ritual life was embedded within domestic spaces, or that spiritual practices took place outdoors in relation to the landscape itself? The presence of strategically positioned stones and terraces may indicate a subtle, integrated approach to ritual, one that balanced social cohesion, defense, and engagement with natural forces. Speculative interpretations extend further. Some researchers propose that the site may have functioned not only as a fortified settlement, but also as a ceremonial hub. The circular dwellings, terraced walls, and vantage points could have created a rhythm of observation and movement, linking the community to celestial events, seasonal cycles, or territorial markers. Could Castro de Santa Trega have served as a focal point for regional gatherings, ceremonies, or astronomical observations, bridging practical life with spiritual and social identity? The surrounding environment plays a crucial role in understanding the settlement. From its hilltop perch, the community had access to fertile valleys, river resources, and the Atlantic coast. The landscape itself would have shaped daily life, agricultural practices, and possibly ritual observation. Were certain terraces or walls deliberately aligned with rising or setting suns, distant peaks, or river confluences? And if so, how did these alignments influence the timing of rituals, the movement of people, or the organization of labor and social hierarchy? Walking through the ruins today, one senses both resilience and intentionality. The terraced slopes, stone foundations, and remnants of walls create an immersive experience, allowing visitors to imagine the rhythm of ancient life, the movement of people along narrow lanes, the gatherings in courtyards, the vigilance from fortified heights. The stones speak quietly, yet deliberately, of human effort, social organization, and an awareness of both place and pattern. Castro de Santa Trega, like Khirokitia, Tal-Qadi, Ġgantija, and the Corsican Dolmen clusters, challenges our understanding of prehistoric societies. It demonstrates technical skill, strategic planning, and social coordination in a context without written records. Yet it also resists full interpretation, leaving questions about ritual, cosmology, and social structure unanswered. How did these communities perceive their world, both natural and spiritual? How did they encode meaning in stone, space, and landscape? And what knowledge or beliefs might remain hidden, waiting to be discovered by careful observation and thoughtful reflection? As the Atlantic wind sweeps across the hilltop, rustling vegetation and echoing against stone terraces, Castro de Santa Trega endures as both a monument and a mystery. Its walls, foundations, and pathways preserve traces of human ambition, ingenuity, and intention, yet the full story remains elusive. And in the quiet persistence of this ancient hilltop settlement, we are left with the same enduring question that accompanies all the sites we have explored. What truths about human purpose, belief, and knowledge remain encoded here, hidden within stone and landscape, waiting for those willing to pause, observe, and wonder? From the fortified hilltops of northwestern Spain, where Castro de Santa Trega preserves the echoes of ancient communities and carefully planned settlements, our journey now sweeps across the African continent to the lush, undulating plains of West Africa. Here, in the fertile landscapes of modern-day Senegal and the Gambia, a network of megalithic monuments stretches across the horizon. The stone circles of Senegambia. These enigmatic formations, scattered over hundreds of square kilometers, continue to puzzle archaeologists and anthropologists alike, offering tantalizing glimpses into the spiritual, social, and cultural lives of the region's early societies. At first sight, the stone circles appear deceptively simple. Across grassy plains, gentle hills, and near dry riverbeds, low, upright stones rise from the earth, forming circular and oval arrangements that vary dramatically in size and number. Some circles are modest, only a few meters across, containing half a dozen stones. Others extend more than 30 meters in diameter, with dozens of carefully spaced monoliths creating a sense of harmony and precision. Walkers moving across the landscape today can almost feel the deliberate intent embedded in these arrangements, as if each stone was placed with care to communicate something beyond the practical or utilitarian. Dating the Senegambian stone circles has proven challenging, yet archaeological investigations suggest construction spanning from roughly the 3rd century BCE to the 16th century CE. Excavations at selected sites have revealed burial pits, human skeletal remains, pottery fragments, iron implements, and ornamental artifacts. These findings point to a strong funerary function, marking the resting places of ancestors and possibly reflecting social hierarchies within the communities that built them. Yet for every burial discovered, there remains a circle whose purpose is less clear, whose placement and orientation resist straightforward explanation. Why do some circles appear solitary on a hilltop, while others cluster in vast cemeteries? What cultural or spiritual logic determined the selection of these specific locations? The layout of the stone circles invites close scrutiny. Concentric rings, central stones, and carefully spaced perimeters suggest an intentional order rather than random assemblage. Certain stones stand taller or are more massive than others, potentially serving as focal points, markers of significance, or ritual anchors. Could these differences denote status, clan affiliation, or stages of a ceremonial journey? And what of the spacing between stones, the relationship of one circle to another, or the alignment of clusters along subtle ridges and valleys? Is there a pattern, perhaps astronomical or symbolic, that we have yet to decipher? Many circles are grouped into extensive necropolises, where clusters of stones extend across hills and plains, sometimes interconnected by faint pathways or sightlines. This clustering raises intriguing possibilities. Were these networks designed to map social or territorial hierarchies, linking families or clans through shared ritual spaces? Did the placement of one circle relative to another encode cultural memory, genealogical knowledge, or cosmological understanding? The precision and persistence of these patterns over centuries suggest knowledge transmitted across generations, yet without written records, the meaning remains elusive. The stones themselves provoke further questions. Rough-hewn, some weighing several tons, they were transported and erected using tools and techniques that remain largely conjectural. How did communities without wheeled vehicles, pulleys, or metal tools manage such feats of engineering? Was it sheer communal effort, ingenious use of levers and ropes, or a combination of practical and ritualized labor? And what social structures enabled this coordination, chiefs, councils, or communal rites, that allowed large groups to work collectively on monuments of enduring significance? Beyond construction, the stone circles may have served multiple purposes simultaneously. Funerary, territorial, and ceremonial functions could have overlapped, creating a landscape imbued with both physical and spiritual order. Some scholars suggest that certain alignments of stones might correspond to celestial events, marking solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles, guiding agricultural practices or ritual calendars. Could it be that each circle was more than a burial ground, that it was a stage, a temporal marker, or a sacred observatory linking earth, sky, and society in a single integrated system? Cultural context adds another layer of intrigue. The Senegambian region has a long history of complex societies, trade networks, and spiritual practice. Oral traditions, folk tales, and symbolic practices provide tantalizing hints about the meaning of these stones. In some accounts, the circles are described as sacred spaces, places where the living could commune with ancestors or where spirits were honored. While such narratives cannot be taken as historical evidence in themselves, they indicate that these monuments held enduring significance, shaping the collective memory of the region over centuries. What might these stories reveal about the original intent of the circles or about the values and beliefs of the communities that built them? The environmental context also demands attention. Many circles are sited on elevated terrain, providing visibility across valleys, rivers, and plains. Some are near watercourses, fertile fields, or trade routes. This raises questions about the interplay between practical needs and symbolic placement. Were elevated sites chosen for defense, prominence, or ritual significance? Did proximity to natural resources influence ritual practices or social organization? And how might the landscape itself have been conceived as a sacred canvas, with stones placed not just for commemoration, but as markers of the human relationship to land, sky, and cosmos? Speculative interpretations extend further. Could the Senegambian stone circles have served as centers of regional identity, communal negotiation, or even social cohesion through shared ritual? Were ceremonies conducted at certain times of year, guided by light, shadow, or the movement of stars? And if some stones were designed as focal points for meditation, offering, or observation, how did participants experience these spaces, walking between stones, observing the horizon, or performing ritual gestures that encoded social memory and spiritual knowledge? Walking among the stones today, one is struck by their quiet persistence. Weathered by centuries of wind and rain, they remain arranged in forms that demand attention and reflection. Moving through clusters of circles, following their subtle curves, and observing the interplay of stone and landscape, one senses both continuity and mystery. These are monuments that record human intention, yet the message is incomplete, tantalizingly obscured by time. The stone circles of Senegambia, like Khirokitia, Tal-Qadi, Castro de Santa Trega, and the Corsican Dolmen clusters, challenge our understanding of prehistoric human achievement. They reveal technical skill, social organization, and an awareness of ritual, space, and possibly astronomy. Yet they resist full interpretation, leaving us with profound questions. How did these societies conceive of death, ancestry, and the sacred? What knowledge and beliefs were encoded in the placement, orientation, and arrangement of stones? And how much remains hidden, preserved not in artifacts or texts, but in the silent geometry of the landscape itself? As sunlight shifts across the grassy plains, casting long shadows across upright stones and concentric circles, the monuments endure as both witness and mystery. The wind whispers through the stones, echoing faintly across centuries of human endeavor, hinting at the lives, beliefs, and ambitions of people long gone. And in the quiet persistence of these ancient arrangements, we are left with the same enduring question that accompanies all the structures we have explored. What truths about human purpose, ritual, and understanding remain encoded here, waiting for patient observation and reflection to bring them to light? From the vast savannas of Senegambia, where stone circles trace ritual and memory across the landscape, our journey returns to the British Isles, to a region steeped in ancient history and enigmatic earthworks. Here, perched on rolling hills and commanding views of the surrounding countryside, stand some of England's most remarkable hill forts, Maiden Castle in Dorset and Danebury in Hampshire. These fortified settlements, visible for miles, evoke both practical ingenuity and layers of mystery, offering glimpses into the lives of communities who shaped the land long before written records. Maiden Castle dominates the Dorset landscape with its impressive earthworks. From a distance, the fortification appears as a series of concentric ditches and banks sculpted into the natural contours of the hill. The largest hill fort in Britain, its scale is staggering. Over 19 hectares enclosed by formidable ramparts, enclosing spaces that once contained houses, communal areas, and possibly ritual zones. Walking the perimeter today, the contours of the ditches and banks evoke the rhythm of human effort and planning. Thousands of tons of earth moved, shaped, and compacted without modern tools. The sheer labor involved raises questions about the social structures that organized such monumental projects. What motivated these communities to invest such effort into fortifications? Defense, status, ritual, or perhaps all three intertwined in ways we are only beginning to grasp. Danebury, though smaller in scale, provides a complementary perspective. Perched atop a chalk hill in Hampshire, it encloses a roughly 5-hectare area with a single, well-preserved rampart and ditch. Archaeological excavations have revealed circular houses, storage pits, and evidence of extensive craft and agricultural activity. Like Maiden Castle, the site demonstrates strategic placement, elevated, defensible, and with clear visibility of surrounding lands. Yet the layout of Danebury, combined with the evidence of sustained occupation, suggests it functioned not merely as a fortress, but as a community hub, a place where social, economic, and possibly ritual life intertwined. Dating these hill forts places them primarily in the Iron Age, roughly between 600 BCE and 100 CE. Maiden Castle, however, has earlier origins, with evidence of activity extending back to the Neolithic period. The continuity of occupation implies a deep-seated significance attached to these sites, persisting over generations. But what aspects of these locations rendered them so enduringly important? Was it the defensibility, the agricultural potential, or a spiritual resonance tied to landscape, horizon, and sky? And how did the communities adapt and transform these sites over centuries, layering successive generations of earthworks, structures, and ritual spaces atop one another? The architecture of the hill forts is particularly intriguing. At Maiden Castle, the multi-valet ramparts, multiple concentric banks and ditches, create both physical and psychological barriers. Some ramparts reach impressive heights, while deep ditches accentuate the defensive nature of the settlement. Yet their design is not solely martial. Certain entrances are complex, incorporating angled approaches and overlapping banks, possibly designed to control movement, signal status, or even facilitate ritual processions. Could these architectural choices encode social hierarchies or symbolic meanings, transforming the act of entering the fort into a deliberate experience of awe, respect, or initiation? Excavations at Danebury reveal similarly nuanced design elements. Circular houses, tightly clustered along terraced slopes, suggest careful spatial organization. Central courtyards or open spaces may have functioned as meeting points or ceremonial zones. Storage pits and granaries hint at food security and communal planning. Yet even within these functional structures, traces of ritual emerge. Certain pits contain unusual deposits, animal bones arranged deliberately, pottery fragments with symbolic decoration, and occasionally exotic items hinting at trade networks extending beyond the immediate region. What role did ritual, trade, and social signaling play in the life of these hill forts? Were they centers of regional authority, nodes of exchange, or stages for community-wide ceremonies? The environmental context of both Maiden Castle and Danebury adds another layer to their mystery. Elevated positions afford strategic visibility over fertile valleys, river courses, and distant hills. Yet these locations also impose challenges: exposure to wind, isolation from immediate water sources, and the difficulty of transporting heavy materials to elevated positions. Why did communities select these specific sites despite logistical obstacles? Was the visual dominance of the hilltops, the symbolic elevation above surrounding land, as important as practical considerations? Could the very act of shaping the landscape, hewing earth, constructing ramparts, and terracing slopes have been a form of ritualized labor, embedding meaning into stone and soil itself? Speculative interpretations extend beyond defense and community planning. Some researchers propose astronomical or cosmological considerations. Sightlines from the fortifications align with certain horizon points, possibly marking solstices, lunar events, or seasonal transitions crucial for agricultural societies. Could the orientation of entrances, ditches, and ramparts have been designed to observe the movement of sun, moon, or stars, blending practical surveillance with spiritual observance? And how might these alignments have guided communal rituals, agricultural timing, or societal calendars? The sheer scale of Maiden Castle, combined with its layers of occupation, suggests a community capable of remarkable coordination. Coordinating labor for ramparts, maintaining domestic structures, and conducting ritual or social activities across such an expansive site implies sophisticated social organization. Was the authority centralized under a chieftain, distributed among kin groups, or negotiated communally through ritualized practices? And how did the balance between daily survival, defense, and spiritual life shape the lived experience of inhabitants. Walking through the remains of Maiden Castle and Danebury today evokes both awe and reflection. The contours of the earthworks, the terraces of stone and soil, and the faint outlines of domestic structures create a visceral sense of presence. One can almost hear the echoes of human activity, the rhythm of construction, the conversations in courtyards, the quiet moments of contemplation or ritual that gave life and meaning to the stones. These hill forts are at once practical, symbolic, and enigmatic, their walls and ditches silently recording centuries of human effort, ingenuity, and belief. Comparisons with other ancient sites explored throughout our journey, from the stone circles of Senegambia to Khirokitia, Tal-Qadi, and the dolmens of Corsica, highlight both universality and distinction. Across continents and millennia, humans have shaped landscapes to reflect social, spiritual, and practical priorities. Hill forts like Maiden Castle and Danebury remind us that defensive architecture can also be deeply symbolic, that domestic space can coexist with ritualized activity, and that landscape itself can be both canvas and participant in human endeavor. Yet, despite centuries of study, the full meaning of these sites eludes us. How did their inhabitants perceive time, space, and sacredness? What knowledge, beliefs, or cosmologies guided construction, occupation, and ritual? As sunlight shifts across Dorset and Hampshire, casting long shadows over the banks, ditches, and terraces of these monumental hill forts, Maiden Castle and Danebury endure as witnesses to human ambition, ingenuity, and mystery. They preserve traces of communities that shaped land and society, yet guard their full significance behind the passage of time. And in the silent persistence of these ancient fortifications, we are left with the same enduring questions that echo across every site we have explored. What truths about human intention, ritual, and social organization remain encoded here, waiting for careful observation, thoughtful reflection, and the patient imagination to bring them to light? From the rolling hills and terraced earthworks of Maiden Castle and Danebury, where Iron Age communities shaped the landscape with both practical and symbolic intent, our journey now glides southward into the lush valleys and gentle slopes of South Wales. Here, amidst green pastures and quiet country roads, stands a monument of enduring mystery and monumental scale, the Tinkinswood burial chamber. For thousands of years, its silent stones have overlooked the surrounding countryside, guarding secrets of human life, death, and ritual that continue to challenge understanding. The first encounter with Tinkinswood is arresting. Rising from the low grassy knoll, the burial chamber is dominated by an immense capstone, a single slab of limestone weighing an estimated 40 tons. Balanced atop a series of supporting stones, it creates a cavernous chamber beneath, a hollow space that has housed human remains and ceremonial artifacts for millennia. Approaching the monument, one cannot help but marvel at the technical skill required to lift and position such a colossal stone without the benefit of metal tools, cranes, or wheeled vehicles. How did a Neolithic community, more than 5,000 years ago, manipulate materials of such scale with precision and care? And what drove them to invest so much labor and ingenuity into a single monument of memory and ritual? Tinkinswood is part of a broader tradition of Neolithic burial monuments in the British Isles, yet it stands apart in both scale and simplicity. Unlike multi-chambered tombs or complex passage graves, its architecture is stark, a single massive capstone forming the ceiling of a simple rectangular chamber. Surrounding this central feature are smaller stones, arranged as supports, with evidence of a long, low mound that may have originally encased the chamber. The monument's minimalism contrasts with the monumental weight of its presence, hinting at a society capable of sophisticated planning while choosing a restrained, powerful form to convey significance. Could the monument's simplicity have been deliberate, intended to amplify the symbolic power of the stones themselves, rather than relying on ornamentation or complexity? Archaeological excavations suggest that Tinkinswood functioned primarily as a burial site. Human remains, both cremated and inhumed, have been recovered from the chamber, alongside pottery fragments and other artifacts indicative of Neolithic funerary practice. Radiocarbon dating places its construction around 4,500 BCE, situating it in the later Neolithic period, when communities across Britain were consolidating monumental architecture as a central expression of social and ritual life. Yet while these findings provide insight into the tomb's purpose, many questions remain unanswered. How were individuals selected for interment here, and what social or spiritual criteria determined placement within the chamber? Was Tinkinswood a communal mausoleum, serving an extended community over generations, or was it reserved for specific lineages, elites, or ritual specialists? The monument's sheer physicality invites reflection on labor, organization, and social cohesion. To raise a stone of 40 tons, early builders would have needed coordinated effort, knowledge of leverage and fulcrum, and perhaps techniques now lost to time. Was the construction of Tinkinswood a communal act, a ritualized labor that reinforced social bonds and collective identity? Could the physical act of moving, positioning, and balancing the capstone have held symbolic significance, representing the transition between life and death, earth and sky, human and spiritual realms? And if so, how did this knowledge shape daily life and the social hierarchy within the community that created it? The spatial arrangement of Tinkinswood also encourages contemplation. The chamber's orientation, its relationship to the surrounding landscape, and the alignment of supporting stones may not be purely functional. Some researchers suggest that the tomb could have been oriented with solar or lunar events in mind, marking solstices or equinoxes, and connecting human life to celestial cycles. Could the builders have observed the movement of light across the chamber at certain times of year, using these events as calendrical or ritual markers? And if such alignments were intentional, what knowledge of astronomy and cosmology did Neolithic communities possess, embedded in the stone and reflected in the interplay of shadow, sun, and earth? Tinkinswood's location within the Vale of Glamorgan, amid fertile plains and gently rolling hills, further suggests deliberate choice. The surrounding landscape would have offered agricultural potential, fresh water, and natural vantage points. Yet the tomb is not situated on the valley floor but slightly elevated, allowing its silhouette to dominate the landscape. Was this selection primarily practical, for drainage, visibility, and protection, or did it carry spiritual significance, situating the dead between earth and sky, visible to the living, yet removed enough to command reverence? Could the monument itself have served as a focal point for communal memory, a gathering place for seasonal ceremonies, or a marker of territorial identity? The human remains and artifacts within Tinkinswood provide additional layers of mystery. Fragmented bones suggest collective interment, with generations of individuals placed together over time. Pottery sherds, some decorated, indicate ritual offerings, while other finds suggest connections with wider Neolithic networks. How did these artifacts relate to the spiritual beliefs of the community? Were they intended as offerings to deities, as guides for the deceased in an afterlife, or as symbols of social cohesion, binding families and clans through shared practice? And how much of their meaning has been lost, obscured by centuries of silence and decay, leaving us to interpret the evidence through the lens of material remains alone? Speculative interpretations of Tinkinswood extend to its broader cultural and symbolic significance. Some researchers propose that the monument may have functioned not merely as a tomb, but as a locus for ancestor veneration, a site where living communities engaged with the memory of the dead in a tangible, spatially defined way. Could the imposing capstone and enclosed chamber have embodied a transition between worlds, a threshold between the mortal and the sacred? And might the very act of visiting, entering, or interacting with the chamber have been a ritualized experience, designed to convey lessons about mortality, community, and cosmic order? The technical achievement of Tinkinswood also raises broader questions about Neolithic society. To erect and maintain such a monument, communities needed more than physical strength. They required knowledge of geometry, materials, and collaborative organization. Could such projects have served as a means of transmitting knowledge, skills, and social cohesion, blending practical labor with ritual significance? And how might these monumental constructions have influenced the development of regional identity, hierarchy, and cultural memory across the Neolithic British landscape? Walking among the stones today, visitors are struck by both their permanence and their silence. The enormous capstone, smooth from centuries of weathering, balances precariously atop its supports, a reminder of human ingenuity and the mysteries of prehistoric engineering. The chamber beneath, partially enclosed by low stones, invites contemplation of the lives once connected to this place, the decisions, ceremonies, and social structures that led to its creation. In the shifting light of dawn or dusk, the monument transforms, casting long shadows that accentuate its geometry and evoke the passage of time, reinforcing the sense that Tinkinswood is both ancient and alive in its presence. Tinkinswood also resonates in comparison with other monumental sites explored across this journey: Khirokitia in Cyprus, Castro de Santa Trega in Spain, the stone circles of Senegambia, and Maiden Castle in England. Across continents and millennia, humans have invested extraordinary effort in shaping the landscape, erecting structures that encode social, spiritual, and practical knowledge. Yet Tinkinswood's scale, simplicity, and precision give it a distinctive aura, its single massive capstone embodying both human ambition and humility, a silent witness to generations of labor, ritual, and reflection. The mystery of Tinkinswood persists in the questions it leaves unanswered. How did its builders conceive of life and death, community and lineage, earth and sky? What rituals, beliefs, or cosmologies guided the placement of stones and the arrangement of burials? And what knowledge, now lost, was encoded in the very act of raising the monumental capstone and sustaining the site across generations? Each question invites reflection, urging observers to consider not only the technical skill required to create such a monument, but also the human imagination, social structures, and spiritual understanding that underpinned it. As sunlight drifts across the Vale of Glamorgan, highlighting the contours of the capstone and casting delicate shadows across the low supporting stones, Tinkinswood stands as both a monument and a mystery. Its enduring presence invites contemplation of mortality, memory, and human ingenuity, bridging the gap between our modern perspective and the lives of people who lived, labored, and ritualized here millennia ago. And in the stillness of this ancient chamber, we are confronted with the same profound question that accompanies every ancient site we have explored. What truths about human purpose, belief, and understanding remain hidden in these stones, waiting for patient observation, imagination, and reflection to illuminate their secrets? Tinkinswood, in its monumental simplicity, encourages a meditation not only on the achievements of Neolithic builders, but also on the universal human drive to mark existence, connect with the past, and impose meaning upon the landscape. It reminds us that beneath every capstone, within every carefully arranged stone circle, and along every elevated hill fort, lie traces of human thought, ritual, and care that transcend time. And though much of that knowledge remains inaccessible, the stones themselves endure, offering a quiet but persistent invitation to look, to wonder, and to imagine what might still be hidden within their enduring silence.